From Africa's entrepreneurial frontline, Founders Battlefield returns with episode 6, where we ask a hard truth every founder must face. What happens when your most brilliant hire becomes your biggest cultural liability? Because in today's startup terrain, competence can scale your business, but culture determines if it survives. Hosts Michael Anthony Macharia, founder of Seven Seas Technologies and Ponea Health, introduces AFOS, the African Founder Operating System, a new lens to hire with clarity, not chaos. He is joined by Catherine Githua, CEO of Talent Frontier Solutions, who unpacks how culture drift begins and what it takes to reset team alignment. Farah Ismail, managing partner at Boyden East Africa, reveals how misaligned talent silently sabotages legacy at the leadership level. And Manish Sardana, co-founder of Crydel, shares hard-earned lessons from managing Gen Z ambition in high-growth teams. Together, they confront ego, burnout, and the illusion of hustle. This isn't HR, it's your founder operating system. Only on Founders Battlefield.
Thank you and welcome again to Founders Battlefield. It's a great Saturday morning, and I've got some great guests with me here. I'm Mike Macharia. I'm the host, and thanks a lot for watching, and your comments have been fantastic. We take significant feedback, and today's topic is a result of some of the comments we've had from the various founders in terms of having the conversation around talent and human resources, and really people. So today's conversation is around the talent trap, and what we are referring to is looking at the connection between culture and competence. And with me, I've got great people, and today, for the first time in the panel, I have two women, and only one. We have balance, 50-50, so finally we're getting there. So congratulations to us. And with me in the panel, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a short while, Manish, Farah, and Catherine. And I'm Mike Macharia, your host, and great to be here, and welcome to this show. So we start with Manish. Manish is somebody I know, and when I called him to this challenge, he stood up and said, Mike, I'm coming. This I want to talk about. I'm very passionate about talent, and I really want to contribute to this conversation. So Manish, welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm really keen to finally, no, we've not spent some time. I even see you came with running shoes. So I think we generally meet
Yes.
in Karura on a Saturday morning at 6:30. Yes. So finally we are meeting in a studio at this time. But anyway, Manish, over to you. Tell us about yourself briefly, and then introduce yourself. We're all really glad to have you here.
I think I would like to introduce myself as an entrepreneur.
Okay.
I think I love being an entrepreneur. Even when I have worked in organizations, I've always kind of felt and saw myself as an entrepreneur. Currently, I am the co-founder and CEO of Cradle. Cradle is Africa's largest study abroad platform that uses technology to connect students to universities across the world. Previously, I was working with the WPP Scan Group, and I spent about 7 years there. And then during COVID, I left that job to start my own company. I'm originally from India, but I've been in Kenya now for 11 years. And in my previous life, I was also an entrepreneur in the technology space.
Oh, fantastic. I'll deep dive into some of what you've mentioned about your career coming here, becoming an entrepreneur, global entrepreneur, coming to Africa from a different continent. It's quite fascinating. We'll talk about that. And then Farah, always great to see you again. Farah is also somebody I meet at Karura at 7 o'clock or 6:30 on a Saturday morning, 7. So I'm happy to have you here. I'm sure you'd have been doing something else, but Farah, great to have you here. Yes, Farah?
Thank you so much, Mike, for having me on this podcast. I think there's some really valuable learnings and taking from experiences from everyone. Myself, I am a Canadian-trained lawyer with an MBA. I've spent a lot of my time overseas in Canada and the US, but I actually came back from the diaspora because I'm really impact-driven. It was about coming back and really trying to impact the space and grow leadership and talent with a view because I am Africa optimistic that, this continent, we need to grow, we need talent to come back. And I think we're going to touch on some of the issues of the diaspora. I've had an interesting journey. I've worked across multiple sectors as an in-house lawyer for about 20 years and really working in compliance and also HR. And I've worked across different companies. So I've worked from startups to multinationals and family businesses. And I now am the managing partner for Boyden. So I've now moved into a true entrepreneurial space from working in a corporate sector. And I now run a search company and board advisory firm across the region. And I spend all my time hiring talent and working in this space. So I'm super excited to be here to talk about this. And, my thing on this whole talent thing, we do here on the strategic side, culture eats strategy, but culture definitely eats HR strategy. And I'm really excited to be speaking on this topic today.
Fantastic. And, Farah, one of the things we will be discussing, I really want to probe you, and I hope you're not going to charge me any consulting fees, is when you're doing, some of the things we're going to talk about is when you're headhunting for founders, it could be very different from headhunting for multinationals.
Yes.
How do you differentiate the talent that a founder requires and that the multinational requires? But don't answer now.
Okay.
We'll talk about it.
I'd love to speak
I would like to
about
pack that
Yes.
and just for you to start thinking
Yeah.
some of the conversations. And Catherine, great to have you here. And I'm really keen to know how you've evolved and where you are today as a business, but also as an individual in this whole ecosystem as you move into life. You've just mentioned to me earlier when you were on the prepping, you mentioned to me that when you turned 50, you said, look, I need to optimize even the way I do my business with people. So welcome, Catherine.
Thank you so much for having me. Like you've heard, I'm Catherine Githua. I'm co-founder of a company called TFS, Talent Frontier Solution. The keyword is talent. So right now, we are just bridging the gap between founders and the employees. HR is such a critical part of anything anybody does, whether you're a one-man show, whether you're a startup, whether you're a corporate. So my background, I was actually a banker for 10 years. Then I decided, let me try entrepreneurship. And that's what I've done for a very long time. So I have met all manner of people. I've run a restaurant. I have done a lot of branding. That was my core business for the longest, and it still continues. But now, finally, we've decided there's such a big gap between what people expect when hiring and what you get. So we're in that space. We are trying now to bridge that gap by even training the people who are being hired, by helping you hire according to your culture. So I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. And as you said, bridging the gap and also what expectation we have between the ideal position vis-a-vis what you get. And I think that brings us to really now the heart of the conversation, really laying the foundation of where we're here. Talent has been in all our conversations, in all the online discussions that we are having as founders. Talent has remained a significant conversation item. Either, one, employees feel that founders sometimes are the worst people ever to work for because they're just slave drivers. Two, founders feel that the employees don't value the business the way they should value the business. They think the founders also want employees to be entrepreneurs like them. Okay? Three, there's a big conversation around Gen Zs or another cohort of people today who quit on the fly. You even say, "Oh my God, what happened here?" They quit on you, yeah. Or the way of working has significantly transcended. It has changed significantly post-COVID and everything else. And where people are beginning to realize, I don't have to be. It's no longer master-slave kind of engagement. It is, I work for you, you work, we work together. It's kind of conversation. Then the next thing that's also there is the issue of competence versus culture fit. So yes, you get somebody from a multinational company plugging into a multinational plugging into a startup, right? Manish, you come from WPP as an entrepreneur in a publicly listed company, and then you start your startup, and then all of a sudden you realize you may not necessarily get guys at that scale of WPP to come and work for you, not because of of how much you can afford, but it really could be also be a culture fit or a culture problem. But for whatever reason, when you make a lot of money, you raise money from investors, you then go back and hire those same guys that you realize you could not work with. Then everything falls apart. When things fall apart, then you have to fire the same guys. Those are the first guys you fire in your ranking, because the investors tell you, go back to the guys who helped you build the first level of business. So these are all contradictory conversations that we have, right? And there's also the issue of experimentation. Sometimes, how do you experiment? You're trying to launch a new business. What kind of people do you bring into this business to experiment, right? Sometimes, do you hire the whole cookie cutter approach? Or do you figure out, are there different innovative ways to hire people or to work with people? Let me not call it hire people, to work with other human beings or other resources across your ecosystem. Do you treat employees as partners? Do you treat them as transactional kind of part of your business? Then there's also the issue of global drain. There's this conversation around, let's take Kenyans overseas, 20. Is that correct? What's the story there? I would like you guys to chime in on to what your plan is. Yes, we've got a labor shortage significantly, 100%, but then there's all this conversation, let's go globally, right? But also people like Trump are saying, we will retain our best people. So Manish, it will be interesting to know, Trump has, for instance, said that the best students should stay in America. So aren't you part of the brain drain? Manisha, last, but we'll come to that, right? Just think about it. Maybe you're taking all our talented people overseas. And Trump is saying, which is okay, these guys have to stay in America. So who will build Kenya? Just from our point of view. Yeah. But people are selfish. They'll do what is best for them. And then we talked about education versus execution. Is education really what gives you execution capability? Is it culture? Is it your inherent ability as an individual to be very good at what you do? Will somebody with a tier 1 global university experience be different from somebody who's maybe just done a diploma, but the difference in both of them is attitude? We can talk about that. So we want to start with that conversation. And then also the issue of accountability and entitlement is a big problem in our market. What should I expect from you? And what should you expect from me? What kind of contracting do we have between us? So that's really the context of our conversation today. But it's not limited to that. We are got a free fall in terms of conversation. We keep our podcasts. We'll only stop when we have to stop because we have reached a point where we can't communicate anymore. That is 1 hour, sour. If it's 2.5 hours, it's okay. If it's 4 hours, we'll stay here. So guys, if you have any other meeting to go to, you need to block it for the next 2 hours, okay? So we can proceed. So we start with the personal journeys, really. And today I would like to change this and throw it at one of you guys. Generally, I start with my personal journey, which I make it very unfiltered. So maybe it helps other people come to the table, okay, and have their own kind of feel and flow, how far we can go. But this being our 6th episode, by now you've watched our episodes, you know it's going to be as honest as we can get and as raw as we can get. So Manish, do you want to try and go for it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Please, we go for it. You ought to be as raw as possible. And I'm really keen. I want to know something I don't know about you, Manish, today.
You can start with my personal story?
Anything. So long as we get to where we need to go. Our journey has to be aligned.
Yeah, so I was born into and grew up into kind of like a low middle income family in India. India is very interesting. We have 1.6 billion people, so it's extremely competitive. So right from my mom, I remember, told me in my very younger years that, Manish, the only way for you to get out of poverty is for you to educate yourself and just become the best at everything that you do. So it started from there. And then I think, as you kind of grow up in the Indian education system, the competition really shows up because you're not the only one trying to be the best. I mean, everyone around you is trying to be the best, and everyone's mom is telling them the same thing, be the best. So you kind of like forced into this ecosystem where, of meritocracy and then, just this desire to be the best, and not just even a desire, but like a necessity to be the best, because if you're not good enough, then you're just not going to make it. I tell you a very interesting story just to kind of give you context and flavor of like what does really mean is we have a family WhatsApp group, and just a few weeks ago, one of my cousins posted that her daughter, my niece, secured like 97.3% in her year 12 exams. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And but just like I saw this message about a few hours later after it was posted, and I realized that in those few hours, not one person has congratulated her. So I was really, really shocked. So I just like private messaged one of my cousins is like she's done so well. Like, why is the one? And I got no reply. And then a few hours later, someone posted in the group, and they said, "Poor thing, what she's going to do now?" So the challenge is that, to get into a good university in India, they are competing between 99.2 and 99.6% marks in your year 12 exams. If you're anything below that, you don't make the cut. So think about from the perspective of the child who's probably given it everything to get to 97.2. I mean, that's average across 5 subjects. And she doesn't know what her future is going to be. So you grow in that kind of like intensely, insanely competitive environment, and that environment kind of continues right after the education into your work life, where for every single role that is available, there are thousands of people applying for the same role, and you're just one of many. So everyone is trying to outpace you, everyone's trying to outsmart you. So the idea was like, in this whole kind of like life, I grew up in a very hyper competitive, high stress environment. I mean, it did not feel like stress at all at that moment. It was something you just got to do. Today I look back and I say like, wow, the amount of stress that we took, especially when I become a parent myself and I'm raising my child, and I just don't want to give them stress, but it's like the stress that I grew up into. So I think what it did was that it kind of really, really made you like stay always on your toes. It made you extremely gritty. Perseverance was like you could throw the worst things at us and we will find a way to survive and come out of it actually winning. And then there are some people who could not survive the pressure. And I had a couple of my cousins who, tried to commit suicide even because the pressure, they just couldn't keep up with the pressure. So it has like a really, really good side that it kind of shapes you to become a really gritty person, but it also has a really bad side because like some people, if you can't deal with that pressure and stress, you collapse. So I grew up well. I did well academically. I did well, and eventually I did my education in economics in India in a really good university. And then after my degree was done, I was like, now what do I do? And in India, like there's a lot of focus on higher education. So the next step, like being a graduate is just not good enough. So you have to do your postgrad. So I went to do my master's in economics, and I applied to this college called Delhi School of Economics, which is like the most premier kind of like respected, esteemed university in India. And I remember that time 75,000 students had applied for 75 seats. So they had 75 seats. So you had a 1% chance of making it. And I made the cut, and I was lucky, and I did okay. But then in the first semester, I decided to quit. So I dropped out of the college because I think that was year 2000 when I got into the university from a master's. And I think that was like the very early days of internet. Amazon had started to kind of explode, and kind of new stuff was happening in technology in the Silicon Valley. And of course, we were kind of hearing about it. And I just like at that moment realized that technology is going to kind of reshape humanity for good. And I really wanted to be a part of it because I was not a software engineer. I didn't learn to become an engineer, but I just wanted to be part of that ecosystem. So I dropped out, and everyone was very shocked because dropping out of Delhi School of Economics was considered stupid. As I look back onto my life journey, I've done a lot of those stupid things, and I think just been still very exciting as a journey. So I started like a online e-commerce platform, and that is year 2000, where there was like no real internet happening. So everything was like there were no payment gateways, there was like no shopping carts, there was no delivery services, nothing. So you had to just figure out everything on your own. So I built a simple HTML page and I put some stuff together, and we had in my small house, I put a few things together, and I would just like physically go deliver it in like public transport. And of course, like it didn't work, for very obvious reasons. I was also very naive and very young, but still full of a lot of optimism and hope. And then eventually kind of like didn't work out. So I kind of went into a depression. Like 1 year I was just sitting at my house because, my classmates who were graduating out of Delhi school were going to UK, to do their PhDs, or US to do their PhDs, or they were getting into consulting jobs. Like the theory was that like once you graduate out of Delhi school, I mean, your life is set. Like there's nothing to worry about. And here I was a failed entrepreneur. So I just went into like this 1 year of deep depression. I was just like lying on the couch and watching TV. Like that's all I did. So then like I just eventually decided to kick myself out of it. Like I just couldn't, it was just like too boring. And then I just did my MBA in India. Like, okay, where do I start now? Like, I don't know how to start another company. Didn't have any money. So I just decided to do my MBA and then got into a job market for a couple of years. And then I was very, very clear, like, this is not for me. Like, I am born to be an entrepreneur. I have to be an entrepreneur. So a very interesting thing happened. Some of my kind of friends had just come back from the US and they started education technology business. And they said, why don't you come and join us and build us the commercial side of the business? Because they were all software engineers. So I joined them as one of the co-founders, and then eventually that business kind of scaled well, and we raised $75 million over a period of 7 years, which was a huge thing in the early 2000s, raising that amount of capital. But yeah, I mean, we made terrible mistakes, bad hiring. I think we can talk about hiring there. I think like the moment you raise funding, like the first thing you do when you raise funding is like just go out crazy hiring people. It's like when we hire like 100 people, they will solve all our problems. Forget about product market fit or anything, just people will solve everything. So there was this tendency of just like we just overhired and just like, I mean, that's another story, but eventually it didn't really work out. But I spun off my part of the company to a separate company, and then I sold my company and exited successfully. So I finally got like my first successful entrepreneurial exit. It was a great feeling. And then, I just took a break. I mean, I'd worked dog years. I mean, like a dog life, for 7 years, and I'd kind of really ignored my family. So I decided to focus there, and then, took a break from work, and then got a chance to got invited to come to WPP. And I think my kind of, the reason I was invited was because of my technology focus and my technology background. So they really wanted to build a technology and digital marketing practice within the group, and that's where they invited me to join WPP. So I just came. I mean, this was actually just like a Facebook conversation. I got DM'd on Facebook, what are you doing? I was like, doing not much. Why don't you come and work with us in Kenya? I mean, I knew the guy who called me. I was like, sure. Like a few minutes later, I had the offer letter. A few minutes later, like no real HR process was followed, to be very honest. And 7 days later, I was in Kenya, and that's how I started working at WPP. And so I worked, I think like, there was this conversation that you were talking about, like working and hiring in a large corporate and hiring and managing teams in a startup, and how different it can be. And I've been on both sides of the spectrum. I worked with a large public listed company. WPP was the world's largest marketing and advertising company. So I worked in very large organizations, and I've also, worked in startups for a lot. I mean, personally for me, I've never seen any difference. I mean, I've hired exactly the way I hired when I was an entrepreneur, when I was in WPP. And I managed people exactly the same way I managed my teams when I was in startup, the same way in WPP. And I continued that practice. Like for me, there was no difference in the way I built the organization, the way I hired, the way I managed people. So I worked there, and then again, I mean, like 2 years into the job, I was like, nah, I can't do this anymore. I can't be an employee anymore. So I was like, I need to build something. Like I love building things, and I just can't be sitting there. So then I went to my boss that time was Bharat Dakrar, and I said, look, I have this idea. I want to build a marketing automation platform. I think our clients need it. And marketing and advertising is a services business. And I said, like, the services business is going to die out. We need to build into products businesses. And this is my experience. This is what I can do. Yeah, so I mean, I didn't get a lot of resources, to be honest, but I had time, so I started building stuff. So I built a platform called Optimus, which is a marketing automation platform, and within 3 months of launch, it became $1 million business in its first year. Our first client was Barclays. Now it's called APSA. So APSA deployed our platform across Africa, and that was like a huge success, and that like gave me validation that I can actually build technology products and scale them commercially within Africa. So that was my first moment of truth where I said, I can build something in Africa and make it successful. And then I built another platform, Gobi, that, Michael, you know about, which is an e-commerce as a service platform where small entrepreneurs can launch their e-commerce businesses online. And that also became very successful. So I think after all of these successes, I was like, I think I'm ready to start my own journey now. So come COVID, this is the time I was, we had all this time sitting in house and, there was not really much happening and everything was kind of quiet down and time for me to reflect. And I was like, that's it, I'm done, I'm out. So I resigned. My resignation obviously was not easy, given the critical role I was playing in the organization. So it was a long process, but eventually I got my way out. And started Cradle that time. And then, I remember that time there was like a friends and family intervention session that happened in my house. It's like, Manish, don't do this. Don't do this. Yeah, you're the peak of your career. You're successful. You're doing so well. You're getting into a space where you didn't even know what you're going to do. By the way, by the time when I resigned from WPP, I didn't know what I'm going to do. I had no idea. In fact, the first thing I did after I resigned was I opened my laptop and I went to Google and it's like top 10 startup ideas for Africa. I had no idea what to want to do. The obvious thing was to kind of continue to build what I was building, but I was very clear that I wanted to build anything that could compete with my previous organization. I am a very, very loyal employee. So I wanted to build something new. And eventually the idea came through and things started to happen. And then we are where we are today. So that's very long, my journey.
No, I guess it's an interesting journey because there are two things to think about. One, we want to come back to that. Without a safety net, did your degree, not having a degree at the beginning, when that safety net is removed mentally, do you think you become more innovative? We'll come to that. And then also now with that journey, as you said, interesting, you talked about working for WPP, which is a public company, coming to Kenya, launching two other businesses, was being given a platform in which you became an entrepreneur within a big organization.
Yeah.
Also give you validation for scaling. Not everybody has an opportunity to become an entrepreneur within a bigger corporation.
Yeah.
And that also then comes to the next question is, and really I think is also to aspiring to some of our audience who also are employees that could be entrepreneurs within their organizations, not realizing by not putting that themselves out there, they lack the opportunity to test ideas within their employers' ecosystems.
Yeah.
So maybe that is what you need to test to be able to help you scale when you come out.
Yeah.
But you can't expect to scale and have the attitude of scaling when you say finally to my employer, bye-bye, now I want to become an entrepreneur. Maybe you need to start becoming an entrepreneur before you exit. Anyway, we're going to come to that conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's about mindset change.
Absolutely.
It's about driving a country to start realizing that we are all accountable. Even when you're working for somebody, you have to take responsibility because then we are all growing together. So we'll come to that conversation. Thanks a lot. It's an interesting story. I told you I want to know more about you. Finally, despite all the time we spend, this is the first time you say the story. Anyway, Farah, Twende.
So, really interesting hearing your background. So I would say, and you were mentioning, I've actually come from having the professional side. So coming from an Indian family like yourself, you're either a lawyer, doctor, or business person. And so we have all three in our family. I did start my career, so Kenyan, left at 16. And I'd say my career has been, or my life is one about really taking opportunity, looking at redesign, but also adaptability. I think those things are three things that I've carried through. So it was the opportunity to go overseas and get the education. So I have an environmental science specialist, a law degree and an MBA. And then I've got also a background in entrepreneurship for emerging markets. So I'd say I started in a very corporate world. In the law firm structure. I was a corporate commercial litigator in Canada when I finished school. And again, like I said, culturally, that was a great thing, and I felt as a woman that I wanted to have a profession that I would be able to carry forward. My family was very big on education, and then that really set it. So I'm very grateful to have come from that. And like you, I believe education is the key for transformation, and it's always been dear to my heart. So in doing that, but then life happens, and I moved to the US and was looking for an opportunity, and I ended up working for a very innovative e-learning company in Baltimore. And it was basically moving in-house now from being a outside law firm lawyer to moving within a business strategy. And, lawyers actually, and this is why my MBA was critical, lawyers don't really understand business. It's an interesting thing. And when you move in-house, you realize how much you don't know about governance and business as a lawyer, unless you've exposed yourself. And that was part of the MBA. So it was interesting because I ended up at this company in a very entrepreneurial business, probably 2 years out. And I found the CEO sitting on the floor, a very dynamic female leader, which was amazing to work with, sitting on the floor, putting together board papers. And my role was to be her right-hand person, to do anything and everything as you do in an entrepreneurial organization, which is where my first experience was of what it takes to, I think I've always been an entrepreneur at heart, thinking of always adding value and making sure, cutting the bottom line. I think I grew that, might be cultural, coming from, East Africa and the family background, but I've always had that mindset. But it was also finding her on the floor and assisting her in any way, whether it was bring her the coffee or do whatever. And I learned to do many different things in this organization. We exited after 7 years. The company sold to Pearson. It was a great exit. So, I got to see what building in that, and within that organization, when you talk about entrepreneurship, it was about building solutions. So in taking this course at Harvard, really, what is the definition of entrepreneur? It's actually looking for solutions that are gaps in the market. Whether in this emerging markets, it's something that the government should be providing and isn't, like infrastructure, healthcare, education. Where are the gaps? What's the solution the market needs? So that's what the entrepreneur's role is. So in that business, we were running 22 boards across the U.S. And the solution was, this was before the Zoom days now where transcripts come out. Like I had to do minutes across 22 companies and figure out we needed a solution. So it was building within the organization a structure and almost a small business that would service 22 boards, doing the minutes, doing the agendas, doing everything, but also running the legal risk management system for the company, and getting ready to exit. So all of the due diligence, all of that. And so it was very interesting. It was a very interesting journey of being part of an exit. I then am one of these people that came back. So I actually never thought I'd come back to Kenya. I came to climb Kilimanjaro in 2010 and, came back and I transferred through Nairobi and I was like, oh, okay, this is really interesting. But my journey to come back to Kenya was actually on the plane back from Kilimanjaro. I sat next to Emmanuel Zai, who's now part of Kenya's Vision 2030, who was talking about the brain drain. And it was all about, we need Kenyans to come back. You've been in education. Education is one of our pillars. I'd been doing this for 7 years. And as I mentioned, education for me has been what I've been most grateful for. And I do see it as transformative. So there was an opportunity to come back to Kenya to work with Bridge International. And again, I took it as an opportunity to seize. It was another opportunity to adapt. And I think entrepreneurs have to learn to adapt to new environments, new situations, new cultures. Coming back to Kenya was definitely a cultural change for me, having worked in North America. This was way before the days of the highway now, traveling to Mombasa Road an hour and a half, coming back an hour and a half, dealing with talent here was interesting because I've now, been working with talent in the US. So there's a lot of really interesting things about readapting to Kenya. But then I definitely stayed. I've spent about 20 years now working through different organizations, consulting on my own, to finally moving into the entrepreneurial space and now managing my own company. But that journey wasn't easy because I think coming from a corporate world where you have the safety net and you're getting a pay to now running a business and actually making that break. And I think the statistics show, especially for women, we are more successful in our late 40s and 50s, breaking away after we've handled all of the other duties we have to finally get into entrepreneurship. And women are actually very successful in those late years as entrepreneurs. So I think I could say I've now come to that stage of running it. And there's definitely a shift in mindset from when you're an employee to an entrepreneur, and it's a very interesting one. I also come from a risk management area, and to be an entrepreneur, you actually have to take risks. So I think, that in my own journey has been very interesting to learn how to get to market quickly with ideas, because my natural tendency is to perfect and really try and do that. So it's this journey from moving from being a corporate to moving into entrepreneurship, how I make decisions, how I view things, has been interesting. And, through my 20 years in these different roles, I was dealing a lot with talent. I was always, as a lawyer, I always dealt with HR, because if you don't catch it on the front end, it's going to come bite you on the legal side. So I've had a lot of years working with talent, hiring within organizations, dealing with bad talent, dealing with bad hiring decisions, to now in a role where I get to really bring that experience working with companies and boards to bring the right talent. I deal with the challenges myself. I mean, it's not perfect. Sometimes there's a gut around hiring talent that I found. I've developed a gut around it. And what more can I tell you? I also I like to redesign. I think gone are the days where we can be stuck, and I think that's where I was finding. Like, I think people can get stuck in a corporate role, but gone are the days where people stay in companies for 30 years. I think you have to constantly redesign and grow yourself and adapt to different situations. And so my life, I think, as I journey it, has been that. And I would say I'm a very multifaceted leader, woman. I bring in my personal experiences into my business experiences. When I say that, I'm a competitive bodybuilder. I've also done reality TV. I like to test and grow myself and really pressure myself and challenge myself to grow. And I think that is the ultimate to be able to develop as an individual. And, through that experience, I think I can then look at also the value of that. So in hiring decisions, if I have two candidates before me, for instance, that I'm recommending to a company, if there's an individual who is well-rounded, they're an athlete, they have many different interests, they're, and then there's equally a great candidate, but they don't have that zest for life, that grit, that constant growth, that athlete, I'm actually going to pick the one that's more rounded, because I think in today's environment, that's the leader that we need. So from seeing my experiences, how I've responded to the environments I interact in, what's needed, and I've worked in multinationals, I can see the different environments. So in my view, it's actually a very different hire for a multinational than it is for a startup. And also hiring for nonprofits. There's a whole thing about a very different type of leader in nonprofits, but we're now seeing the commercialization of leaders in nonprofits. There's a need for that. No longer having funds coming forever. You need to have social enterprises. And also within multinationals now, there is also a look at people who are more entrepreneurial, but now is it a cultural fit? So I work with these challenges. I think the topics today are really interesting as I sit through. We could talk about them for so many hours. But yeah, on all these issues, whether it's the fit, whether is it education, or is it, someone's attitude, I do think entrepreneurs, in my experience, there's an inner entrepreneurial heart. I don't know if you can teach it, and you need that spirit, and you can't just take somebody and throw them into an entrepreneurial venture. You need to make it fit. You need that person with grit. You need that person who's adaptable. You need the person that's creative. And I think our schools, to the question of education, our schools, when you finish a degree, teaches you to finish something. But I think entrepreneurial is about redesigning. It's about creating. And the creative part has to be there in the individual and the redesign. So I think there's more to talk about, but my journey, I've been testing that on myself, and I bring to the market my test on myself.
I'm going to ask one question. It's not as we go, and I would like to think about it, because we're going to come back to it. As I've listened to you, I've asked myself, if I was to start... If my career today was Farah's career, the way we've gone through, the way you've explained Baltimore, you've explained what you're doing, think about the role of AI today.
Yes.
If you just put AI in your life, your life would have been very different. So somebody else taking that career trajectory like you, today is not even going to make it.
Yes.
Because AI will disrupt everything you've said.
Right.
Number one, the way of hiring, the kind of work structures there are, the kind of knowledge you think you have, even in terms of even placing people, AI can now tell you these two people will never be compatible, for instance, correct?
Yes.
The way of working. So let's also think about what's the role of AI now, the kind of talent that we need to be hiring.
Yes.
Okay? And I'll give you some crazy stories around this AI. And I'm beginning to realize, even for me, in my current role in my life, I'm redesigning even people around me who I hire. Earlier, when I had a PA, I had a chief of staff, or you had this guy. Now, those people I don't hire. If I get up at 4:30, okay, between 4:30 and 6:30, which I get up, once I've chosen I'm going to learn how to do development, or understand I'm going to do a website, or I'm going to understand I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do research. What I can do in 2 hours using AI is what I used to hire a whole team of people to do for me. So all of a sudden, I'm beginning to understand I have so much knowledge that I used to depend on other people to give me. Get my point? So now that
Totally
changes.
Yeah.
So your kind of employee that you need right now has to be extremely forward-looking, has you extremely engaged. So it's going to be a conversation we need to have, because our careers would have changed significantly. Manish, when he first came to me and you helped me build our Ponea business, our e-commerce platform, today that stuff can be done in 3 days. Then we used to sit down, talk about script meetings, whatever, 90 days. Today, everything you did for me can be done in 3 days, correct? 3. Yeah. So we've moved from a 90-day project to a 3-day project.
I totally agree with you just on the point that I mentioned I hired a team of 2 paralegals to do the minutes, run across. Now I can have a transcription.
Yeah, you need nothing. You don't even need any paralegal, anything.
So you're right. And that's where adaptability comes in. We need to be constantly adapting. And now we're adapting to AI.
You're going to come to that. We're going to find out why these people know it's going to happen. AI is going to happen. People know.
It's already happening.
But why is it they're not adaptable? Why is it your Gen Z or even your millennial is not adaptable? And and you can stay on their face. You see it's coming, but they're not getting it, right? Catherine, over to you before we don't want to swell you in our passion for now. Twende.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's so great to meet you. You're great people. I've loved your stories. Mine is a different kind of story. Typical Kenyan story. Went to school, was employed. When I was getting employed, I had 2 options. Our days, it was very easy. If you've done well in school, I had the option of being employed or going to campus. I thought money will do. So I went and was hired in Stanchart. And like people our generation, I stayed for 10 years. And if I was to move to another organization, I would have taken maybe another 20. We were loyal. We stayed. But I thought I need to just move out because of family. That is my main reason for moving out of employment. I said, I want to raise my family. I want to put my values in my children. And I'll go and be a housewife, isn't it? And I we agreed with my husband, yes. I went and told my mother and my mother-in-law. They discouraged me. They were like, all this education, you went to school, you're good at what you do. Why are you doing this? So that was where the first decision I made just for me and my family came there. But when I went, I was going to be a housewife, but I did not stay for 3 days in the house. A friend of ours, those days there was no AI, like you said. Everything was you do it physically, wanted to do branding. So he wanted caps, these kofiyas? And he was like, I need caps. And I said, I can go to Dubai and get you the caps. How many do you want? He says, I want 1,000. And I was like, wow, I'll start branding. So I went to Dubai. Google was very little then. So you go and land in Dubai and you start asking. But I came back with what he needed. So that's when I saw he could not go. He is an entrepreneur, but he didn't want to go himself because he was afraid. So I was like, I can do this for you. And that is where my branding business began. When I decided I want to do other things apart from branding. You see, I'm an accidental entrepreneur in all this. Somebody was selling a restaurant. We also bought a restaurant, and I started running that restaurant. And that's where hiring now came in a big way. Because what happened was you've bought a going concern. It's a restaurant, it's doing well. You're left with the people who were there as staff members. I was like, I can do this. But their culture fit and my culture fit were different. They did not want to be told. They were not listening to me. What their story was, we used to do this like this before, you know. So that is now where I was like, what do I want in my restaurant, our restaurant? And that is where I saw hiring came in. I had to get referrals. Somebody comes and they talk a big game. They're not able to cook for their lives, you know. So, and with this also branding, it was we promise, we over-deliver, we under-promise. But a lot of people came, they want to over-promise. You come and tell a customer, 1,000 T-shirts. Within 2 days, you'll have them. Then 1 week down the line, he's like, what happened? And I'm like, but we had 2 weeks. He says, no, your people came and said, within 2 days, you will have, because they want the job. So that was where there was a misfit. So we decided from now on, hiring will be according to our culture. But we had to define. We also didn't know as founders, what is it we want? What are our ethics? What is it we want? And that is where I now decided, let me start studying people. I love people. Let me start studying. For this fit, for this business, what do you need? Do you need somebody who's agile? Do you need somebody who's steady? Do you need somebody who keeps their word? And that is where talent comes in. So I've done that for a very long time. Then came COVID. COVID changed a lot of our lives, I think. And I noticed people, first and foremost, don't want branded merchandise. We're also moving into AI. We are moving into digital marketing. And I thought, I have a lot of experience. Why don't we now just do talent? We look for people. We connect the talent that is existing with the people looking for talent. Then the existing talent is lacking in a few things. So we do a lot of mentorship. We do a lot of training just to fill that gap. And right now I am noticing we have a lot of misunderstood Gen Zs, like you said. I have Gen Zs in my house. I am working with a lot of Gen Zs, getting them work, mentoring them. And all they need, by the way, is just to be heard. Then our generation, we are very structured. We are people of giving instructions. We are people of looking over their shoulder. I say, I want a poster done, let's say, for example. Then I am there looking, no, I don't want that color. Instead of letting him give me 3 options, and then we say, oh, I like this, change this, or merge these 2. So there's a lot of training for both the founders, for both the employers and the employees. And that is what I am finding. For us to be able to work together across generations, we just need to retool ourselves. And you've talked about AI. I agree with you. What I used to do in 2 weeks is done within 1 day. I want to know a topic, even when I'm training about something like finance in entrepreneurship. I don't need to now go and read a lot of books. I just need to talk to one person, listen to them, then go and do a search. I just put it onto ChatGPT. This is what I'm thinking around, and it comes out. So you have to be very adaptable, both as the entrepreneur and as the employee. And you have to be, in Kenya we call it kujituma. You have to try and be the right person for the right fit. You have to try and know what your culture is as the employer, but also as the employee, what you will take and what you will not take. So your irreducible minimums, let's call them that, must align. Because there are some people who have very wonderful CVs would fit in corporates. But when they come to entrepreneurs employing them, when they come to SMEs, they're such a misfit because what they are thinking, their ambition, their foresight, what they have done before does not align. From corporate, small business, 2 people is very different from a corporate. And I've worked across both, and I have seen it is easy to take the rules of one side of the corporate and try and apply it on SMEs. as the small enterprises, founding business where somebody's they're the accountant, they're the HR, it cannot work in the same way. And so that's where now we are trying to bridge that gap. That's why I'm here.
Great, Catherine. That was a great explanation about how you've been, how you've gotten here. I think today I started differently. Generally, I start my story. Today I'll give you my story briefly. My story is quite interesting, actually. It's actually a case study at the Strathmore Business School, Lagos Business School, and I think also at the ESC Business School. I'm not sure if they took it there. But a lot of university students, not university, AMP is Advanced Management Program participants call me, or owner-run management. Guys from Nigeria send me a message with a screenshot, I'm doing your case study, which is part of the thing we need to do. We need to encourage more African case study. So when I started my business 25 years ago, my first business was 7C Technologies. And the challenge then was getting competent, the challenge was getting competent people to work for you at the right price points. So here you're a startup, you're operating from a small room, you're convincing a guy who works for a company that has been here for ages. Some of them are multinationals that either came in like IBM, then left and came back. So you're 20, I'm 25. I'm trying to convince a guy who's 45 to work for me, and he's telling me, hey, how much do you want to pay me? How is that going to work? So there was a correlation between the solution I was trying to offer the market vis-a-vis the kind of skill set that I required. I required significant level of high-level caliber resources then in the IT space to work for us, because then what happened, because we never owned the technology then, it was owned by IBM or owned by Microsoft or owned by Cisco or owned by Oracle. You had to have significant level of capability for them even to allow you to touch their products. So it was there was a connection between skill that you have in a company and these companies accepting for you to even touch their products. Because remember, some of these solutions are running banks, are running power companies, are running telcos. So they're not going to allow you to sell in the market. And remember, most of these companies were not setting up shop then in Kenya. They were coming through what we call reseller network. That was how we started our business. And I remember one day sitting in, I had a project in Kigali with the defense and the central bank. And I tried to hire this engineer who never used to show up. He was the only qualified guy in my projects. Then one day I'm there, the central bank governor is calling me, where is your people? But the guy has gone drinking. He forgot about the project. He's now deceased. But the guy I was in the middle of a project. This guy is my most valued talent. And the guy is not there. So I'm as good as this guy. So the image of our business is highly connected to the individual. Imagine I'm in the middle of a project, okay, in Kigali for the central bank. Same thing happened to me. In the middle of a project for the defense bank, again, same thing happened. So I have to fly to India. One thing I'm thinking, how do I solve this problem? There are no Kenyans capable of doing this. I flew to Bombay. I Googled a company, checked what they were doing. I went to Bangalore. I'd never been to India in my life. Went to Bombay. Bombay, the airport. From Bombay to the airport that takes you to Bangalore, there's a different airport. I ended up being taken by one of those rickshaws, one of those companies there. Those guys tell you, taxi. I just got into it, dragged me into some dodgy hotel. I slept at night like this for 3 hours waiting. My God, are they going to rob me? Went back to the airport, went to Bangalore, hired my engineer, told the engineer, I'm going with you now, like a package. The guy was called Balvinda. Till today, we are very good friends. Balvinda Singh. Mr. Singh, tell us, we have to leave now. We have to go to Rwanda now. Because remember, this is a defense bank. Things have taken so long to be implemented, they're not even looking at me. Those days, they would come, they would give me VIP treatment. Now everybody looks like me, like you guy. You told us a solution. Where is it? Eventually the engineer comes down after some yellow fever or whatever. We go to India and he solves my problem within a day and a half. And that's how I became the largest company in Rwanda as an IT company, because we went now to all banks selling this solution. All banks selling this solution. It was something nobody had ever done in the Rwandese market. And it's funny, and I think the Rwandese people, definitely, a lot of them who worked for me then have become very successful businessmen, because then it was year 2000. And you remember then it was, when we went to that market, what Balvinda did, we went to the telco, in the telco data center room, and found a very a new switch that had never been commissioned because of genocide. So the switch had remained there, brand new. Nobody had ever even configured it. So Balvinda, my friend Balvinda, configured it, and that became our first ISDN, what you call a digital 64K link in Kigali. And that's how Kigali started doing what you call wide area networks. Understand? That's how story. So in one way, it's a combination of entrepreneurship and having the right talent. So Balvinda and I used to carry him like this everywhere. And he was vegetarian, and Rwanda had no place for vegetarian. So I even told the restaurant, now listen, you have to learn how to do vegetarian burgers. So we would go do cheese, nini, whatever. I told Balvinda, you have to stay with me 2 weeks. Okay, so Balvinda survived on vegetarian burgers. In Kigali, then it was 2000. You can imagine how Kigali was in 2000. So I have good memories. Then when I came back to Kenya to try and implement this business in Kenya, interesting enough, I realized I also required resources. Same problem. People trying to hire people from large companies, coming to my company, they're giving me salaries. I'm wondering, can I even afford this? You just pay yourself just enough to pay rent. Okay, you're an entrepreneur, just to pay rent. Now the guy is telling you I need, then he comes with his my baby. I just got a baby. I say, baby, do I even know? Because now you become Baba and Mama. The guy says, my mother, my child, my wife. I say, now what do you mean? Me, I'm 25. You're 45. Can't you manage yourself? But I realized you become Baba and Mama to this individual, right? And then I realized I cannot do this anymore. It's too much. It's too much. So one day I'm leaving the house, and I decide, what the heck? What is this? No, I'm tired of this nonsense. So I drive to JKUAT. I just wake up in the morning. I take the highway. I used to live in Kileleshwa. I take the highway. I end up in JKUAT. I sit in the server room. I tell the guy, hello, Mr. IT guy, show me students that show enthusiasm of coming to this data center to help you in school. The guy said, I've got 5 or 4. I said, call them. So he called 5 of them, okay? They came to me. We had lunch together. I told them, guys, this is what I want to do. I'm thinking of getting resources. You guys are in 3rd year, 4th year. Can we work together? So listen to me like, is this guy? Who is he talking about? But luckily, I had a good car in the parking lot. I had an Alfa Romeo I just bought, brand new. So what happened? I think they saw my car. They said he looks serious. Okay, so they figured out this guy looks a bit serious in 2000 and now 2 maybe, or 3. So what I did, I convinced them. I told them first, you 4 guys, give me 3 people. If I gave you 5 million shillings, which I never had anyway, if I give you 5 million shillings, tell me 3 more people you'd come with to do this venture with. So what I did, every time he told me a name, Farah, Catherine, Manish, I would say this Manish's name is appearing 3 times. Farah's name is appearing 3 times, 4 times. Catherine is appearing 5 times. So I knew Catherine is a very popular person amongst this peer group. So I would make sure Catherine is brought. So that's number 5. Then I know Manish is brought number 6. Then amongst themselves, they refer to each other. So now I had my 10 star employees. Not star employees, I never call them star guys. That's like an AI of sorts, you can think. I was doing my AI of sorts, right? So I tell these guys, listen, on weekends, you guys come into my office. And I start showing you guys technology. Because I realized that curriculum then was very disconnected, very disengaged to what was the reality. So you hire a guy who has just graduated, but you have to train him again because he's not up to speed with what you're talking about, right? So I said, okay, these guys, I need to train them before they come out. Because if I train them when they're in with my company, when they're graduated, I'm going to pay the price, I'm going to be paying salary, plus pay them, then they're going to quit on me. Because they're going to then become very valuable. So I brought these guys in their 3rd year. They started working for me. They would come on weekends. Even Sundays, would go projects. They would help them. I would work with them. So when they graduated, okay, I think I took some 4th years and 3rd years. When they graduated, most of these first-class students came to me to work for me, as opposed to going to PwC. But then I realized I could not afford the salaries PwC was offering. But also I realized I need to convince them in their soul, in their own DNA, in their minds, for them to come and work for me. Because remember, it's also a very family-oriented affair. You graduated. You're going to work for who? Who is that? Like, even they ask you at 7 Cs, what are you guys talking about? You need to go to PwC. Stop it. Okay, you have to go for whichever company you're working for. So I had to compete. The competition between me and the employee was their family and me and my brand. So I figured out I need to deal with this issue. So I figured out what is it they want, money in the pocket, correct? So I figured out that if you give this money speaks, at the end of the day, you need to understand what's their Kool-Aid, as far as telling me. Is it money? Is it impact? They don't care about impact at that point. So I figured I need to put money in their pocket. I said, how will I deal with this? So I figured out, what is it when you leave university? What is it, that one thing that you need? You get a house, you get a TV, you get a fridge, yeah? You get couches, the usual nonsense, right? You go through the whole life cycle of life, right? And then most likely even stay with a relative who stays maybe an hour away from where you stay. So you're spending 2 hours on traffic. So I said, okay. So I made a drastic decision, which is why it comes to the issue of experience versus experimentation. So I began experimenting. So I used to have an office in where Electric Avenue is. Do you guys know where Electric Avenue is? Havana, there. So I had a small floor there in a building called what was it? It was called Bandari Plaza. So I brought these employees. I got them houses. I rented houses, 6 houses, 5 houses, 6 or 7, I can't remember. At one time we had even 10. I put 3 people in each house. 3. So I said, this house, you have 3 people. I got a maid. The maid would be sharing, or house support would be sharing across multiple houses. I provided food. So they would buy from Nakumat. So those guys would go and manage. So one guy is managing 3 houses like that. So these guys were living walking distance from the house, from the office. 5 minutes, 7 minutes. So there's no more traffic in the evening. No more 2 hours. So maximum commute is 14 minutes. So I knew I'd gotten from these guys at least 3 hours of their additional time in their life to now use that effort to learn. So I said, what will I do with these guys? In that extra time, I'm going to push education down their throats. So I invested significant amount of money in equipment, training, material. I had a whole library and equipment and server rooms. So I said, these guys, in the extra time, they're going to be in this place. But then I told them, I convinced them, okay, that what's the total amount of money PwC would pay you? 60,000. Minus rent, minus transport, minus this, you'll be left with 0. So I told them, for me, you're being left with 30,000. Because every other cost I've taken care of. So what's your problem? Aren't you better off with me? They all agreed, yeah, it makes sense. Let's move. So they all came. Now what happened, that became a culture and a cult. I call it a cult. It became a cult. So everybody would say, we have to go and work for 7 Seas. Everybody would say, we have to go and work for 7 Seas. So I got the top students. And now what happened? They are staying in the same houses. So it's easier to shape culture. Yeah? Because from day one, you're telling them, we don't have to conform to what the world is telling us. We can do it differently. These guys became like my brothers and sisters. And think about it, I'm 27 or 29. And I'm employing these guys at 23. So our age group is not far apart, but they're looking at me. So there's a level of admiration. Together we are building. This thing we have to build. So I agree with you, culture. We have to blend it, right? So at some point, I've got 40 of these guys, women, smart ones. Today, some of them are PhD holders. Some of these guys run their own businesses. Some of these guys are senior directors for some of the largest corporates here. Some of these guys are working for Fortune 500 companies. Some of them work for Amazon. These guys started with that journey I just told you. And I infused in them what I believed as my culture, my personal belief of what I want to do. Now what happened, we became, overnight, we had the highest level of competent people in the country at the youngest age. So where you to take companies 5 years to become gold certified Cisco or Oracle certified or Sun certified, we did it within a year and a half against traditional players that were there for a very long time. So what happened? How did that transform our business and culture? So what happened, I got significant level of loyalty from these guys. It became like a cult. It became like a cult. If you have not worked for 7 Seas, you don't know where you've worked. So university, everybody is talking about what we've done. Then immediately in their own mindset, having lived, now they're living in Westlands, they're understanding their lifestyle. I began connecting their pay directly into their level of certification. Mm-hmm. So I told you, if within 6 months you got me to become a platinum partner with Oracle because of the capability, I will double your pay or I'll increase your pay as you went along. So you started at 30, But within a year, you could even earn 150,000 because I knew I was saving significant amount of savings from the discounts I got, right? Now, what happened as a result? Guys just put time in reading and just trying and everything. So that then translated into us becoming top-tier brand, top-tier partner for all these brands. That then translated into finally being allowed into the door to some of the largest corporates to do work. So my biggest validation was when one day we went to Safaricom. Safaricom, I don't know if you know, there's a new annex building. There's where the CEO sits. They had just put up that building. Okay, it was brand new. They were coming from where near I think Sarit Center is. That's old building, and we pitched. I remember pitching for this project. It was I think a couple of $100,000. It was a whole building automation. It was a big thing. It was a big deal. And I remember us pitching against multinationals from South Africa, guys who have been there. My guys, when we went to pitch, you meet each other in the hall, in the corridors. My two guys I look like, we have just come, we have just tried to look smart, the tie, so we can still get our ties together. But anyway, I told the guys, be courageous. We can win this battle. Don't worry, we will win it. And we are sitting in the lobby like this. I remember the CEO of this multinational coming and looking at these guys, like, these guys, hey, where are they coming from? Who are these guys? But I said, like, guys, you have the knowledge. These guys have just the attitude or whatever they want to call it. Because now, there's only how much I can do to get these guys to up certain speed. We went and pitched for this job, but the guys were so good, like, was so amazing. The IT director manager then was South African. He went and said, it's unbelievable. I've never seen black kids in South Africa. This cannot happen. With so much competency, so much capability. He told the boss, he went and told Michael Joseph, I have to award this contract to these guys. Just for me, just for my own emotional state. Just to see if these guys can crack this thing. Because what they did, even for me in South Africa, is and cannot be done. I've never seen it. So they gave us the project. And we did the project like perfectly. I believe it or not, all the other Safaricom buildings from call center projects in Mulolongo, in everything, we did everything after that. With the same guys. Now the team grew massive. So today when I go to Safaricom, sometimes I go there, I find guys that came from this university program. Some of them are directors, a director of tech, maybe director of security came from that program. Can you believe it? That's how they started. Others are doing business for Safaricom. So for me, the way I look at talent, and from my story, and we'll talk about it, and there are many other stories I'll tell you after that, which was once you had this set of human beings working for you, they became like a cult. Now the challenge was trying to bring middle management to them. I think you guys would understand, Farah and Catherine. So imagine trying to bring a middle manager to manage these guys, 40 of these guys, 50. They are a cult. It's a culture. They gave middle managers in my business so much hell. The guys would come look at them and say, this guy, who does this person think they are? This one? This one comes from a multinational. We are the owners of this place. We're the owners of this business. What are they coming to tell us? Maybe they're coming to come and create structures. They're trying to create processes. But they're saying, who is Catherine? So they say they wish to set you to fail. So it took a long time for us to figure out how to solve the middle management engagement with this kind of guys because their culture was so rich. The guys who came out from there had their own culture. It took a very remarkable talent manager who took a very different approach when she came, and she became very entrepreneurial with them. She's the only one who was able to crack this engagement. Today, when I look at her, because of going through the fire with us, she's one of the largest, she's one of the top achieving talent directors for a global multinational. Having moved to Europe, having moved to Singapore, she became the top director for a global multinational. Because then she took her entrepreneurial, she always tells me, I took the entrepreneurial capability from your business to a global multinational. So when I sit in a meeting, I would say my solutions would be so entrepreneurial driven, they would ask me like, what? What did you just say? How did you do that? So for me, the story is, and it's back to culture. How do we drive culture? And as a founder, how do you drive this culture? And how do you build a cult of people who love your business so much that they're willing to help you build and scale? And yes, I can tell you today, some of these guys still maintain a massive WhatsApp group. Even after leaving my organization, they maintain a massive WhatsApp group where they have conversations. They've not allowed me, but I know I see them in funerals or whatever, or weddings and everything else. But then now that brings us to that conversation of the why, right? So we've looked at.
Can I comment on what you said? It's so interesting. So
Yes.
This is free flow, because I've been sitting here, as you said, reflecting what you're saying, and I think what's so interesting is, even from my experiences, and I'm structured. We come from a structured world. You actually created a structure to allow for culture to sit within your leadership. We always talk about culture comes from above. What does that mean? The problem I see, so what you did right there from what I'm hearing is you first you identified the problem, and with talent, what you did was you created a system for them to succeed, which was you saw what was it that they needed, but more importantly, you brought in coaching, a structure for coaching, right? And you gave them performance merits, right? An ability to grow, to empower. And you gave them, it sounds like, you gave them empowerment to do what they needed to do. I think where it goes wrong is, and my experience in a lot of startups is you just come and you sink or you swim. There's none of that. And I think that's one change we can make in entrepreneurial organizations is identify. So what you did was you actually created, there's a big debate between when I look at hiring for entrepreneurial companies that are small or SMEs to multinationals. And the issue is how much structure there is. And I think entrepreneurial ventures feel that if it's too much structure, it's going to be too slow. We need to be fast moving. Yet you were able to do that within your organization to build some structure to bring in that talent and nurture that talent. And I think that's great from what you did. I mean, I think that's the way to go.
And thanks. And I think that even you've brought us to where we are exploring. So really, it's an open flow for you to then start interrogating some of the conversations we've had, right? And I think you've just analyzed my situation and why we came to where we are. We've other conversations we'll have in terms of organizational maturity, because there is a connect between the founder getting mature, okay, based on your age and where you are, and the organization becoming mature. Mm-hmm. You could be too early, and the maturity of the company could also be too early or too late. So, because what happened after that, there was also an organizational maturity conversation we're going to have as we go along. But it's an open flow, and I'm really curious, Manish, you now are building a business, which is scaling, and it's becoming a global business. From a people point of view, based on what we've talked about, let's now explore what is working for you, what has worked. Maybe it could be a trade secret, but what has worked. But again, when I look at your business, I think I understand it a bit. I think AI is going to change a significant part of your business, my assumption. Right? So it'll be great to know from you how that is going. And Catherine, for you also, again, based on the business you're currently doing, placement of people and everything else, that would also be very interesting to understand. And also from Farah and from your point of view is also trying to understand what are your biggest placing challenges you're having, and then really understand why those challenges are there. So any of you can go for it.
Yeah, so I think, I can start, and I think, we had a discussion about, it's a very interesting conversation about hiring and how you hire and how you build a culture in a startup versus a large corporation. And I think, right, there's like a fundamental kind of agreement, generally consensus that, you can't plug and play kind of two different cultures. You can't plug and play people. I think, again, you also have to define, like, what does a startup really mean? Like, today my startup has 125 people. Is it really a startup? Like, at what point my startup doesn't stay a startup anymore? Like, at how many people, number of people? So my previous organization that I was running had about 80 people. So is it a large corporation? Yeah, in terms of size, it's a large global corporation. But I think, like, one of the things that we did was that one thing I think there's general agreement is that once the kind of size becomes really, really large, you need kind of structures, to create in place. So I said, okay, now this is always going to happen. That, I mean, Michael, you talked about it, right? It's a very interesting conversation that when the organization becomes big, I mean, like today you're managing a team of 10 people, you can have as a founder directly connect with them, manage them directly. When these 100 people become like 1,000 people, then what happens, right? So I completely understood that problem because I've been in both sides of the spectrum. I've worked in large organizations and startups. So what I did, when I was in WPP Scan Group was that I said, okay, as we become large and as we grow, we're going to need processes, we're going to need middle management, we're going to need kind of like more HR involvement. I just did not like that. I mean, I didn't want that to happen because I was like, the moment we start doing that, we're going to sort of become like robots and, like you lose the spirit that has got us there. There is a spirit, the cult that you talked about, like that, we're all in this together, that energy that is there, and that energy starts to get sucked out of you the moment become like more structured as an organization. So I said, okay, we can't let that happen, but we are becoming large, so we need to do something about it. So what I did was that I created 4 mini organizations within the large organization. So we said, okay, we're a team of, let's say, about 1,800 people. So I created 4 different business units. So we were in a business where we were handling clients like Safaricom that Michael handled. So we had Safaricom, KCB, Equity Bank, so on and so forth. So what we did was we said, we're going to create 4 mini startups, and I'm going to appoint you as a CEO of that startup within the large organization. Now, these are self-managed, self-run organizations, and these 4 people have been empowered to think, work like the way I would have wanted them to work as a CEO of the organization. So now you're able to create small mini organizations within a large organization. So you allow that startup culture to kind of continue without the hassle of bringing. So now I'm just managing 4 people because like there are 4 kind of CEOs. And this is what I've done with Cradle as well, that, we have 125. I don't know at what point we start getting called a large organization or a corporate. I hope that day never comes, and I'll probably make sure that day never comes. But I think at some point it'll become a significantly large size organization. So I think I've just carried forward that philosophy of creating mini micro organizations within a large organization that can work and run independently, where I think a lot of the work as leaders, what we have to do is to make sure that there is perfect harmony and alignment between us and this kind of bunch of people. I don't call them mini managers. In fact, we just finished a 3-day workshop, with my leadership team, and they're all printing their own cards as CEO Cradle. So I told them that, like, the first thing I told them, in my workshop was that CEO is not a title; it is a mindset. Okay, and I'm very careful. I think I saw one of your notes was like, why don't we have employees work like founders? I don't expect employees to work like founders. I mean, as founders, we have put everything at stake. I put in all of my life savings behind this company. The skin in the game for me is never going to be the same as the skin in the game for a young employee. So I don't expect them to work like founder, but I do expect them to think and act like a CEO of an organization. We also say that we are not a family. So we had this very interesting conversation with my team, said, we are not a family. We are like a well-organized sports team. We have come together to perform a function. This is what we need to achieve as a milestone. And we're going to put together an exceptional team of people, make sure that extremely well trained and well coached. Of course, there's a difference between training and coaching. There's a lot of focus that we're doing now in the organization on coaching and not just training. And then going to build this team together to achieve the goal that we want to achieve. So within in the last 2 years, we've grown from I think 30 people to 120 odd people. We have now 11 offices in 9 countries. So there's been a very rapid expansion. And typically the conversation is when you have this rapid expansion happening, structures break. And nothing has broken so far. Because, I think what to your point for us, how you onboard people in the organization. What was the first conversation that you had as a founder with that person when you hired him or her to start with? Was there a mission alignment in that point at the get-go? Were any false expectations created? So my typical hiring formula has been, I have a very strong belief that people generally like to be inspired. I think people fundamentally want to be inspired, so we don't call them human resources, we don't call them anything, we just they're your people, you're your person, human being. I think people fundamentally want to be inspired. I think inspiration has been sucked out of human life from the way we've been brought up, because anything exciting that you really wanted to do in life was told you not to do. It's it's stupid to do that. Why are you Why do you want to be a DJ? Why do you want to be in a music production? Why do you want to be a musician? Become A, B, C, D. So, we've been brought up in an ecosystem, in a world where the world doesn't allow you to fly and doesn't allow you to be inspired. So it is not their fault. It is not their fault that they're not inspired and you expect them to work like founders and give everything. But I was always telling them, so in my leadership meeting, I said, guys, it is not your fault. Like, look at the previous organizations that you worked in. What was the culture in that organization? How did your parents bring you up? Did they infuse that energy and empowerment and enthusiasm in you? Or did they structure everything for you and told you exactly what to do in any parts of your life? So I said, guys, this is not your problem. You've not been in a system. And actually, a lot of my team members, after the workshop said that, I've never had these conversations. Like, we never even spoke to our CEO, forget having conversations like this. So I think, I think as an entrepreneur, you have to be an extreme optimist. I'm an extreme optimist. I see massive optimism with people. I've not had one case of one person who's left us, we didn't want him to leave or her to leave. Like, everyone has stayed loyal. In my previous organization, everyone stayed loyal to us because we just kind of created that ecosystem where you're like, this is the very best place to work in. Not just in terms of compensation and rewards, but also in terms of recognition, in terms of being valued, also in terms of being inspired. So just to summarize, the conversation that I was talked about was that, we see this problem when you go from a small organization to a large organization. You need structures, but there's a way to not have those structures created. I think like the bare minimum, like we don't have we don't have an HR person in our office. We don't have like a legal person. Like we have no one. Like we just have 3 co-founders. And we perform all those functions that are required to kind of, like, I just don't even like the word human resource management. It's just like, it has such boring words in it. Management is such a boring thing. Leadership is such a better word than management, and it's like human resource. So basically, when the moment you call it human resource, you're saying that you are a resource in my organization, a resource that is hired to serve a purpose. It's a transaction relationship because a resource is a transactional relationship. So we stop seeing them as human beings, and I think like all relationships are fundamentally same. So I tell my team members that, how would you have handled this conversation with your boss if this was your spouse? Why do relationships break down? Because you don't communicate enough. You're not honest about what you're feeling. You let things slide away. And I told them nothing slides away, it stays. If it matters to you once, it will never slide away. It will always stay with you. So don't say that I'm going to let it slide. It doesn't slide, it stays and builds up inside, and one day it comes out as a resignation. So we encourage like a culture where, there is like brutal, honest conversation. We call it radical candor. Radical candor is, I care deeply and personally about you, and this is both, from both sides, but I'm going to challenge you directly. I'm not going to mince my words, but I'm going to give you feedback, and the feedback could be good feedback or bad feedback. Whatever it is, we're going to talk about it in brutal honesty, and people can give me feedback and we can give. So if you create that kind of openness and a culture where everyone feels that they can go and tell the CEO that you screwed this up, and then we couple that now with extreme ownership where no one is allowed to make an excuse at all. Like if you miss a target, or if you don't do a job in a certain way, you have to say that I failed. Like we are telling people, you have to start the sentence by saying I failed. And people have found it so difficult to say because their first reaction. I'll give you an example. Like one person said, my team is not getting an increment. Manish, you're spending at your end such a long time. You're not responding. So I said, again, you're making the same mistake. You're making excuses for your failure. It was your job to follow up with me till the point this was done. Yeah. So we have coupled these 2 things which are worked, like 3 things which have worked really well, like in short and principles. We call it the CEO mindset. CEO is not a designation, it's a mindset. So think and work like a CEO. What would you have done if this was a CEO of the organization? And I think that has created a culture of creating multiple leaders within the organization, so the organization doesn't stop scaling because it is so much dependent on me, which also allows me to make myself redundant in the day-to-day running of the business because I want to be completely redundant in our business. So I can do the next big thing, which is Scale.ai, which is my passion project, which we are launching in September. Second thing we say is extreme ownership. Like you own, there is absolutely no space for any excuse. If you miss a target that is given to you that you committed to, there is going to be no excuse. Like you can't blame anything for it. So if you lost an employee, you have 2 employees left the organization, you would have filled it, refilled it. And employees just don't suddenly leave, you see it coming. Anything that good is happening in your life or anything bad is happening in your life, you always see it coming. So why did you not see it coming? So extreme ownership. And the third thing is radical candor. I care about you deeply. I love you as a human being. And we say these words very openly in the organization. I love you, we say it very openly. I said, I really, really do love you. Yeah. I love you because you're playing such an important part in me achieving the mission that I set out to achieve. So you're really important in my life. But I will challenge you directly always. So that's radical candor, where there is a freedom to have brutally honest conversations about what's going right and what's going wrong.
Okay.
Wow, it's a great. I've been saying that one of the things we're not doing well, we're not sharing as founders. By what you've just said, you could have helped somebody else significantly, who's sort of in the bush right now in terms of trying to figure out why is it not working, why is it working, and I'm sure we've got our great consultants, but also great placement people. Sometimes it's lack of having people who just another founder who can give you this kind of insight. So I think even I've just realized, just validated my thoughts about stuff but you just think, my God, yeah, what he said is exactly, I know it, but how you know, but you don't know.
Yeah, people.
Right, that kind of stuff, you know, but you don't know.
But can I say something?
Sure, yes, Catherine.
That is a very good way of looking at it. But the typical entrepreneur, I feel, is insecure. You go and challenge them.
Okay.
You're like, this can work better in this. And he's like, this is the way it's always been done. We will do it this way. So we have to have both mindsets. You are open to people challenging you. A lot of us are not. We are like, I am the vision carrier, I'm the vision bearer. This is how I see it going ahead. And it can take a different trajectory just by one person introducing their thoughts. And they have the best interest of the company at heart, but you're not careful to listen. So that's why I always think that yours is a typical case study, let's put it that way, for people to study. Because I promise you, we say we're entrepreneurs, we want to grow, but you also have a fixed mindset. This is the way I want to go. This is the way I will move forward. In the year 2026, these are my objectives and my goals. You are just part of you helping me achieve my goals. But I will not go out of my way to implement some of the things you've said because they're not part of our objectives. So I feel sometimes the founders are the problem.
But I want to challenge you.
Yes.
And I'm going to be a bit controversial a bit. Yes. As I grew the model I told you, we did 25 years of this. At the moment, 150 people. When you have a high growth company, the kind of people you have are so highly intellectually smart, engaged. So they listen to you. Okay. What are they talking about? What you need to. Sometimes when you come to me as a consultant, or even as a placement agency, or whatever, the one thing is, I feel that when you come to us, there's a lot of the conversation is very, very gray. It's gray. I don't know. It's very gray. You've not been able to, and really I'm speaking to some of the consulting companies, you're not able to create conceptual frameworks that I can understand. You need to understand. You tell me, if I put in on this pipeline A, I will get B here. You just tell me, don't worry, you listen, you have to do like this, somehow it will come from this B. So there isn't, you've not connected for me the input to the output. That's number one. That's what I feel. Number one is not happening. Number two, and Farah can also speak. You guys can speak to that because you guys are doing placement. Number two, there's also that thing of that I know my business is unique, but you're trying to straitjacket me into a solution that you think you know. You as a consultant, right? You don't come with an experiential capability. So tell me, when we talked about me going to university and doing whatever I did, which consultant in this world would have given me that idea?
None.
Yet Toyota, when you do a case study of Toyota, you went to Harvard, you did, what's one case study you read? Toyota. What is one thing Toyota did? Toyota built housing next to their factories. Staff housing. EABL, Kenya Breweries. That whole place where you see Garden City, all the way until their stadium, that place was employee housing for EABL, for KBL, as it grew. So that's why you see ABL where it is. It used to house everybody in that whole ecosystem. That's what some of you guys don't know. If you lived around my place I lived around there, we used to call it the EABL village. So everybody grew there. So all those were employees that worked for EABL. So the only difference between me and EABL was, as a business, was I had 10 houses, EABL had an estate. Toyota had a campus. In India, you go to China, Huawei have a campus connected to the institution. So coming back to you, and now we are challenging you. It's okay.
It's okay.
Why should I listen to you? Or am I, and sometimes I am listening to you because you've been pushed there by a board member. Because they have decided Mike is a tyrant. Is that correct? We're not going to put you, Mike, you're not listening. You've got too many resignations. We want you to, we are going to bring a HR organization to come and understand what is really broken here. Is that correct?
Yes.
They hire you.
Yes.
You've got a dotted line to a board member who is heading the HR and board committee. So already I despise you half the time. Is that correct? Are you coming to spy on me? Correct?
Yeah.
So what do we do? I already look at you and say, tell me, what are you saying?
Yes.
And the board member who is there has never even run. There may be an employee, okay, who has never run any business. They receive a pay.
Yes.
So they're busy telling me about HR matters. And I'm asking, like, what do they know this one? But it's okay because it's their money. I say, sawa, I'm listening. And since they're paying you, I say, it's okay. Now let's put it. Now that's a framework under which we operate.
Yes.
Help me navigate out of that, because I can tell you there are very many entrepreneurs today in this quagmire. Manish, how many do you think are in this quagmire? Very many. The board has put a gun. We have to hire a consultant to give you some idea. We want to be given an audited report of this company, how it's faring. You think they are? And then employees also use that opportunity. The managers use that opportunity, some of them, to decide we are now going to report on the founder. Is that correct?
Yeah,
that's how we are operating.
Yes.
So over to you.
Okay.
Farah, you guys tell me what solution there is.
Okay.
And how do we navigate this?
I first think the first thing is to remove, I don't know what to call it, BS. You know there's...
No, it's BS, it's BS.
Yes, it's BS.
Yes.
Because there's some people who come with an expected result. This is what we want. Even they give you the brief. This is what we want.
But it's my board member who wants the brief.
Yes.
So he has given you some cheat sheet.
Yes, exactly. So they give you that. But it is up to you, because I keep saying, I look at the organization as a whole. It is up to me to come and say, will I go with this board member, or will I look at the organization as a whole? And normally we start not at the top. We come and we sit with the people who are here. We listen to them, and then you will see they're also a bit afraid. So we are anonymous, even anonymous questions. That is how we begin. Then we also come and say, are these people ready to change? Because you can come and employ me. You have met your KPIs. We have these people who are going to come and give us a report. But are you willing to listen to the change that is needed? Because that mindset, I keep going back to the mindset of the founders. That mindset has to change. You have to be willing to change your mindset. That is the feeling I get. And once we give you, how do you want to implement what we've told you? Will you go with it or not? Because a lot of culture, people don't fit in, because your culture, his culture is very good. You can say what you want openly. There are others who will not say what you want openly. So how do we introduce the open door culture? How do we come to this consensus that we can all say what we want? We try doing things like team building. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work. But At the end of the day, it has to be the co-founder, the management willing to change. That is the feeling.
But you see, and you guys chime in as you go too far. I think it's changing. I think it's changing with the Gen Zs now.
Yes.
Think about when we grew up. Okay, there was nothing like open door. What do you mean open door?
Yes.
And let's start first. Not me at the business, at my house, at my family house. What when you say open door with your dad means?
You can tell him anything.
Is that so? Which one? Okay. Now today we have that.
Yes.
With my son at 14, he's Gen Z. We have that conversation. Is that correct?
Yes.
We never grew with a culture where you could just tell anything to your dad. How is that possible?
That is what I am saying.
So how then do you expect me, as a founder who has never grown up in a cultural mindset, that I can go tell my dad anything? Now you're telling me an employee can come and tell me anything. Do you see there's also an issue there?
That is why nowadays there's a lot of coaching, executive coaching, because that is one of the things that they are taught. They're explained to how it benefits you. You know, somebody has to see where is the benefit in me listening to the employee, but it doesn't come automatically. That is why I also say coaching is a must for every level in the business. That is my thought.
No, it's okay. It's
Yes.
okay. It's okay. Farah, and look, coaching, and I also agree in coaching. But also, I guess, how many CEOs even know they need coaching? And what's the conversation? What's the difference between coaching, okay, peer-to-peer mentoring, okay, and having an advisory board?
Can I?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, you can go for that. I think.
Well, actually, I wanted to comment on the earlier one, but I can also comment on
Sure.
that. So on this approach of hiring somebody to do the talent for you, I think it's critical because I've been, like I said, on the other side. So I've had search firms and recruiting companies, and I've also been an inside lawyer, outside lawyer. The difference is the curiosity and ability to learn the business as a consultant. And the desire to and the time invested. That needs to be done so that you can then know how to give a solution. And so that's what I find sometimes lacking from external consultants. So I think when you're looking for someone, you've got to make sure that they get it. They get where you're going. They get your vision. But they also are not afraid to tell you. Like I've worked with some companies that are like, I want this role, and you look at the organization, and I think that's the value we bring is trying to say, but that role's not going to work. Like you look at the whole structure. So I think as consultants coming in, you've got to do it in obviously a diplomatic way, or you will not be the consultant anymore, especially when the founder feels like they know it all, they know where the organization's going. That's the first thing. And then it depends, you've touched a lot on the points of in the board advisory space. So that's more the talent. You know, I'm coming in, providing you a solution. I think it's up to the person coming in to look for out-of-the-box solutions. You might be thinking something, but I'm bringing you someone like, which is kind of what you did. Well, let's go to such and such school, or there's actually another area or another sector that could bring you. So that's why you go to a consultant. It's to open up your vantage point. Like you might be very narrow, but that's what the consultant's supposed to do. So that's why you should. There is that conflict of, yes, the consultant's been hired by the board chairman and you're the CEO, and how do you deal with that? But that's what consultants have to be able to navigate those spaces. They know they're coming in, but the value of the consultant is someone coming in to give you that impartial view. In the board advisory space, and exactly that, we're implementing change, where I've come in to bring in let's help improve the efficiencies of your meetings. We're coming in, the chair has called us, we need to go look at how things are. And it's very sensitive because, you know, we're telling the CEO who's running the board, like, could be done better, you're not efficient, how do you do it? So I think these are it's first the acceptance, I need help, right? If it's an organization. If it's a chairman putting it down the throat of the CEO, then I think it's the consultant navigating that. I don't know if that was some of the things you
makes
talked
sense.
about.
Yep.
But yeah, I think those are touch points, and it's you know, I think it's up to the consultant to navigate those best with the organization.
So, like to add a few things here. I think, you know, a very interesting conversation is that, you know, as a consultant, you can tell whatever, but, you know, CEOs, founders sometimes only want to hear a certain side of the story. They are very kind of firm in their opinion. And I think we've all been victims of that. And I think, you know, I actually have a coach. Like, I use a coach, and I think it's really been helpful for me. And I'll talk about, coaching versus advisory versus peer-to-peer mentorship. So I'll come down to that question. But I think like one of the things that was really, really interesting for me was that at some point, I was having like a very difficult conversation with Bharat, who was my boss. And he said, Manish, you're coming off such an arrogant person. Like, you come off as such an arrogant person. And I was shocked because I thought I was the most humble guy in the whole world. So I came home, we were having dinner with my wife, and I was like, I'm so angry. Like, Bharat thinks I am arrogant. I'm arrogant. And my wife just like quietly said, it's like I'm furious, yeah. And she says that, but you are extremely arrogant. And I did not have the realization, and I think I was around 38, 37 years old. Like, I thought I was like a really nice, humble person. So one of the kind of real kind of interventions I created in my life is to work on humility. And I think I struggled, because, when you have a lot of success behind you, it's just relatively harder to be humble. And then I think I just like one thought came to my mind, and it just made it very, very clear to me that how tiny I am in the larger scheme of things in the world. I mean, there's like 7 billion people in the world, more than that now. I'm one of the 7 billion people. And when I'm going to die, like my near and dears are probably going to think about me for a month, couple of months, and no one else will ever think about me beyond 24 hours, and they will go back to their lives. And I think, just thinking of myself of how inconsequential I am in the larger scheme of things has really, really helped me. So like I just keep telling myself that, you come, among the 7 billion people in this world, you come, you play your part, and then you go, and that's it, and then you're done. Like, you are a nobody. So like I just keep telling myself how inconsequential I am. So that has kind of helped me stay on my feet and hence be more open to kind of external stimulus. In terms of, what you said, and I think, generally CEOs and founders, and I've worked with a lot of CEOs because in my previous organization, I used to deal with CEOs of Safaricom, of FAPSA, of KCB, like I bet their CMOs, CEOs, everyone. Yeah, it's not, it's like you very few times you find people like humble and look, I'm willing to learn from you. Now, on your question of peer-to-peer mentorship versus board advisory and coaching, yeah. So I have a coach. There are kind of fundamental problems with me as a professional, and one of the things I realized in my coaching program was that every problem is rooted into my personal life. There's some base into my childhood in terms of the way I was brought up. Every problem can be hooked into how you grew as a child. So there's a mentorship program. There's a coaching program I'm part of. Like it's a one-on-one coaching. I used to do a lot of it. In fact, that coaching program is a program that helped me quit my job and start Cradle. Like, because I was extremely conflicted. On one side, like the high perks, high quality job, and then starting up during COVID was miserable. So that coaching program really helped me. So I have a coach. The second thing we do in terms of peer-to-peer mentorship is we have a founders meeting every once in a month. So every once in a month we talk we are 3 co-founders, and we talk about 2 simple things. Three simple things. One is what is keeping us awake at night? Like, what's the most pressing problem that we haven't solved for till now? Okay, because when you're growing so fast, like you feel like there's momentum, things are great. But there's always something back of your head, as a founder, that's not working. So we talk about that. The second thing we talk about is how the journey of entrepreneurship is affecting our personal lives. Because entrepreneurship is really hard. I mean, you know how hard it is. That's why you call it the battlefield, right? This founder's battlefield. It's a really hard journey. It does affect your personal life. So we discuss how it is affecting our personal lives and how are we navigating our personal lives, and kind of just sharing between each other kind of really helps a lot. I mean, there are times when like we are broke, we have no money. I never thought in my life I will ever use Fuliza, but that day came a few days ago when I had to use Fuliza. And the third thing we talk about is interpersonal relationship. So if there's anything between our co-founders, because when you're 3 co-founders building it together, there's always going to be kind of difference in opinions. And in my case, all the 3 co-founders, like I'm Indian, my other co-founder is Canadian, my other co-founder is Kenyan. So we come from different cultures, different backgrounds. So the Shane, who's Canadian, comes from investment banking. You worked in World Bank, worked in private equity. Come from your side of the world, and I am like just like an optimistic entrepreneur, and John is like this amazing software developer. So it's different with different people. And when you have three different personalities, obviously there's going to be like difference in opinions and clashes. And what happens is we don't say those things out. We said, okay, we have a larger thing in mind, and let's like let those things slide away and then work it out on its own. But it never works out on its own. It stays with you. So as co-founders, we talk about, like, sometimes we'll have a really sensitive conversation about equity split between the co-founders. Even though we've kind of all decided on certain things, sometimes it comes up, like, why do I have less equity than you, for example? And these are very sensitive conversations. No one wants to have it. Okay, the person who has less equity, the person who has more equity, both feel very uncomfortable with this conversation. But we have given ourselves a license to create an environment where we can have really uncomfortable conversations with each other without fear of judgment at all. So I think like these three, and board advisory, we don't have board advisory. I think like with three co-founders with our backgrounds, we got like most of the stuff covered that you need an advisor for. I'm an entrepreneur. I have Shane who does fundraising, finance, legal, HR, and then we have John who does software development. So we have such a gifted, like I'm really, really blessed that I have such a really good kind of comprehensive founding team that I don't think we've kind of needed. From a consulting perspective, I have read the McKinsey way very early on in my life. I generally like the frameworks these guys use in McKinsey. So I use some of those frameworks I learned during the reading period with McKinsey, and I think I've found them very, very helpful. But I think I agree with you that more often than not, consultants don't have enough context, but it is also not their problem. They were not invited into your internal functioning. So like when we hired my own coach to kind of do some work with my team members, she spent a month with us. Like, this called something of CEO shadowing. We got a guy who just like shadowed me for 7 days. He was just sitting quietly watching me, the way I run the business. So he was watching body language of people. So you have to kind of really integrate people into your organizations as consultants, just like they're seeing such outsiders. They're not brought in. I don't know whose mistake is that. Like if I ever want to use a consultant, say, you got to spend a lot of time with my team, to be able to give us advice, to get context, and everything.
So even in all that, as you're saying, it's a culture you're building. So if you think about everything you talked about, you're trying to build the cradle way.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Elon Musk way, right? Everybody seems to have the way. Even Jeff Bezos had a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, or has a way.
Yeah.
Jobs has a way, right?
Yeah.
People may say Jobs was arrogant or whatever.
Yeah.
But he ended up building the most amazing organization, right? People say Bezos, yes, whatever. Today he's building one of the largest companies there is, and all these are not easy people to work with.
Yeah, they're not.
I would doubt that those are easy people to work with.
Yeah.
But why is there an expectation that a founder should almost be like your mother and father? Because then they go out in the world and say, look at that guy, that Manish guy is out of control. Is that correct? But then when they leave their house, they realize there are potholes. Okay. They realize there's so much chaos out there. When they come to your organization, you try and remove that chaos in their life and say, guys, whatever you saw out there, that is out there. In my company, there are no potholes. Okay? And they say you're a crazy guy, right? How do you balance that between, because sometimes you need Manish to go out of his crazy way to become the Jobs, to drive his employees who are naturally maybe from Kenya as a culture to become more global, right? Right? How do you drive that change, and how do you know, and how do you make sure that, how do you comfort? Now, that's a question to you, really, you guys. When you go and talk to a founder and you've been told by the employees, that guy. How do you balance between that guy, the reality of what, maybe he's doing the right thing. Maybe it's just culturally uncomfortable for the employees because they're used for potholes down there. They're so used to how life works in our country, a lot of mediocrity in certain areas. So they expect that mediocrity should also creep into the organization. So when you choose to push against that mediocrity, then they say you're a bad guy. How then do you advise when you come to a company? You've said you start ground up.
Yes.
Me, I said I do not want mediocrity. Okay? So my argument has always been, I tell always that my consultant, I think you want me to become mediocre so that I can now conform to this setup. How do you balance that?
I would look at it in this way. The founder knows what he wants. So we have to now get people to align with what he wants, or get him people who will align, because that is where culture comes in. There's some people, there's no amount of training that will get them out of that pothole mentality. So you have also to be able to let people who are not working within your culture, his culture, Steve Jobs' culture, is a culture you don't want anybody to come change. You either come and conform or you're out. But what happens with founders, I have noticed, they're also a bit afraid. Maybe your best worker is not conforming to your culture. So I think a shift, if we can allow them, if we can pick the ones who are teachable, who are malleable towards our culture. So you have to know your culture first. I think that is the basic. What is the culture of this company? Who is the best fit? As the founder, co-founder, you have to also be able to say, what would I want? What is the best fit for this? Why did I employ this person? You can find a very good salesperson, but in your culture, they're not fitting in because they are a drain to the other people. So I believe the first thing you do, you define what do you want in your company, who will fit in. Then we start looking for these people. It is also very hard to fire, but nowadays I'm finding it a bit, if you're not doing what we want, we can let you go. We get people who, that is my thought, we get people who will grow with us, who will fit into our culture, who will improve on our culture. Because, like you've said, there's a lot of mediocrity in this country sometimes. We're entitled. I feel some of our employees are also a bit entitled. So they come knowing I have come from the biggest corporate. Have you ever had somebody tell you, in my previous job, this is what we did. You're trying to give this is our cultural fit, this is where we are going to, but they tell you in our previous job. So you have to actually balance between who will stay and who will go at the end of the day. And that is the surgery that is needed in most companies. But we are afraid of doing that. We are like, let us hang on, maybe they will change, maybe they will improve. But I'm sometimes a believer in remove the part that is not working so that we continue with this culture.
But again, it's an interesting point you've raised in terms of confronting brutal realities.
Yes.
as an entrepreneur. And that also brings me to the conversation that we've been thinking as founders, and I've been trying to understand.
Sorry, Mike, can I talk about mediocrity a little bit?
Sure.
Well, it's something that I have also deeply reflected on mediocrity. So I think I have seen mediocrity as a result of two reasons. One is that you are not in the right role fit. Yeah. So you could have been really good at a certain role, but you were just hired into a role that you're not a good fit for. Or you may have, if you think about, how kind of people get into their careers, they'll take the first job that is available out of university. They don't think that, is this the right role for me or the right, like if there's a job opening, I'll apply. So when we were hiring for a education counselor, I saw we got like 100 CVs from people who have never ever done remotely anything close to education, because there's a real unemployment, there's a real employment crisis here, right? So a lot of people get into jobs because that is the only job available that is going to pay them money, and hence they start working in roles that they are not fit for. So I have seen personally where we've seen people who are not, we don't just call them like people who perform and people who don't perform. Like it's as simple as that. So people who are not performing are typically people who are not suited for the role that they were hired for. So that was a hiring problem to start with. And the second thing that, and I think I really, really strongly feel about that, I mean, we are expecting people to be star performers, but what is in it for them to be a star performer? So when all large organizations I've worked with, they worked in a very simple structure of annual performance reviews. And typically annual performance reviews will give you like 2 or 3 bands of increments. So 5% is inflation adjustment. Like even if you've done like nothing much, you still get a 5%. If you're like a decently good employee, you get like a 10%, and then you get a 20%. So think about someone who's making, let's say, 50,000 shillings a month. It's like If he does really, really well, his best case scenario is to get like a 10,000 raise. After tax, I'm going to get 6,000, 7,000. So you're expecting these people to be star performers. You're expecting them to work like founders and CEOs in that mindset. But what is in it for them? Like now, look at your own side, your own compensation, CEO compensation, right? If you were to do really, really well, imagine the amount of bonus your board will award you. So what we did was that, we did really an audit of saying like, are these the right people for this job? So I think that eliminated a lot of like non-performers. So mediocrity was like weeded out. And the second thing we said was our kind of incentive reward structure is very interesting. It's like you either get massively rewarded or you don't get rewarded at all. So we don't have like a 5-10%, a rule or 15-20% rule. So we had employees whose salaries have grown 400% in 2 years. Like substantially grown. We have people who have come very close to founder salaries now because they are exceptionally great performers. So let them also understand. Right. So now what happened was when we did it for a few people, it's like, oh my God, because they're not used to this. They're not used to getting their salary increment of 500% in 2 years. They've never used to it, but now they're seeing it is happening. It has created like this massive, wild, cult culture of like high performance. Okay, so in our organization, it's like you're either a really high performer or you don't fit in this organization. So you are creating an organization of high performance altogether.
But okay, let me ask. Sorry, can I ask
Sure,
a question?
Jonah,
let it be.
Yes, because you first had to get rid of the non-performers, isn't it? How did you get rid of the non-performers?
So non-performance was our problem again.
Yes.
We hired wrong people for the wrong roles. We didn't go through the hiring process properly. So someone said he's a great guy. Yes. We didn't evaluate. So where the mistake we used to make was we used to hire on CVs. Like I was telling for outside that I haven't looked at CVs for the last 2 years. Like I haven't looked at anyone's CV. Like if you ask me like people that have hired where they have worked before, I have no idea. Okay, so we don't hire on CVs, we hire on values. So we've created so for me, culture is a set of values and anti-values. So we call it values and anti-values. What is culture? It's a set of values and anti-values. What is a value? I used to always start like everyone says, what are your values? So my coach simplified it for me. What do you value the most? That is your value. So for me, I value freedom. Okay, I value impact and change. Okay, so what do you value as co-founders is your values, but we also created anti-values. What we don't value, what we despise. So for example, our anti-values, we are not a 9-to-5 culture. So if you're coming saying that I'm going to tick box, come in the morning, check out at 5 o'clock, we are not that organization. Which doesn't mean that we want you to work on Saturdays and Sundays. What it only means is that if push comes to the shove and things are not going as the way we plan to, you will commit to working on a Saturday or a Sunday. If a student calls you on a Sunday morning, says, I need help, you will not refuse. But that doesn't mean, in fact, I told my team, I don't care you work even 1 day a week or 2 days a week, as long as you achieve what you have to achieve. So when you say we're not a 9-to-5 culture, people assume it means that I have to work after 5 o'clock and I have to work Saturday, Sunday. I said, we are not a 9-to-5 also means you could be doing 9 to 1. It could also mean the other way around. It doesn't mean that you have to work beyond 5. So we had to explain that to people. Now people get it now. So we've created a set of values that what we value as an organization, as co-founders, because we set the tone, and then things that we do not value. So we're not a remote culture. We'll never be a remote culture. We are very clear with that. I mean, there's a whole debate on, allowing people to work remotely. Yeah, it doesn't work for us. We are touchy-feely people. We are emotional. We like social organization. I like to see my people. They like to see us. We engage. We coach each other. We mentor each other. We are touchy-feely organization. We like to work in person. So we create our values and anti-values. And I think now we hire on values and anti-values. Okay. So we explain them what does it mean to work in Cradle. So my typical hiring process would be, once I find someone I really, really want to hire. So like, we call it like, I am desperate to hire this person. Like, this person has to be so good. First, we get them really excited and inspired about Cradle. Like, this is like the best place to work. Look at what we are doing. We're changing the world for good. Okay? The big problem you're trying to solve. So we could get them excited. Once now they are bought in, then we tell them it's a horrible place to work. We do everything. So first we do everything to sell the place. Then we do everything to de-sell the place. I said working Cradle is like chewing glass every day. Okay? And we tell them like, it can be really, really hard to work at Cradle. Okay? But by the way, we pay best in market salaries. So we have always made sure, if you want top talent, you have to pay them top. Like, we don't agree that you have, you can get the best talent with paying low money. We pay like 50%, 100% above market to everyone else. and we incentivize very well. So we first sell them, and then we desell to them. And then we see, is this guy still ready to work with us, or this girl is still ready to work with us. And typically when you do it like this, you get the best people to work with you. So if you hire well, you won't have the problem of non-performance to start with, because you've done, and of course sometimes you get it wrong, like sometimes you get it wrong. The second thing we did was what you said, Michael, we remove mid-management. We said we don't want people who need to be managed. Like the job of managers is to manage people. Like, but why manage people? So we have doers and we have founders. Like we have no other person in this organization. There are people who do, who contribute in clear functional ways to the organization, and then we have founders. So I think removing, and then we were victim to this, like you're like, we need to have a CEO, we need to have this person or that person. Yeah, no. It didn't work for us. We removed everyone. I think at some point we may need, we always in every founder meeting, it's like, Manish, at what point do you think we need a CEO now? Well, that time is not yet come.
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up from some of those things. And I actually think as we were sitting talking about culture, it is the values. And I think we give a lot of, the values, you put them up and they sit somewhere else. I work a lot with organizations to actually put them visually and actually be real living values. Like a lot of people say integrity, what the hell does that mean? So I think, culture is in the values. The other thing, as you talked about it, was compensation is key. How are you attracting them? You attracted them with housing, a lot of the startups I've worked with, or when I'm attracting high talent to startups, or even to myself, it's like, what is in it for them? There's an ownership piece. So do they get stock options? Like, what are you doing? How are you paying them? And then really the work of search firms like myself is talking to those people you've identified that are with your competitor, and how do you get them? And that's really, sometimes you can't go that way. But I totally agree with the CV. Half of it is even how authentic is it? And that's the point. You need to be vetting those. That's why we're here. We don't go through. I go through a CV. Actually, what I find is a lot's not on the CV. What you find out about the person that fits the culture is not on the CV. That's where the interviewing comes in. So these are things, and I think what you also spoke about earlier, which I really liked, and I'm going back a bit, was this thing where you have these small groups where the CEOs, in interviewing a lot of CEOs, which I do, that's my job, to understand leadership, what makes a good leader, what changes from when you're scaling up an entrepreneur organization. And the two things you're working with are either people or systems. Yeah. And there's that inflection point in entrepreneurial ventures. But that's what it is. It all comes down to communication. And communication starts breaking down as you grow numbers. And so in speaking to a lot of these leaders who've been effective leaders and grown organizations, the thing has been that when you're a small startup, you're all drinking the Kool-Aid, the vision, even though it's a crazy founder whose baby you're managing, you're all very close, intimate. What starts doing is as you scale and grow, breaking down. Yeah. And that's where the leadership of the people you're hiring to manage, their ability to translate the vision, the strategy, where you're going, that's what breaks down. And that's why then you need even better communication. So being able to navigate those through staying small and not being highly systemized and structured, but having the smaller groups to communicate constantly, which you do, or putting in those structures. And I think so it's been really, because I sit on both sides. I run my business and I run it like a very lean machine. When do you hire, all of that. So I see that side, but I'm also helping organizations, and I speak to a lot of organizations going through these pains. So I really like some of the things you're doing, and definitely the CVs are not what we look at either. We'll get a CV, but you need to go behind the CV, and that's where all the gems are behind the CV.
Which I think also now, even with the AI, your CV will do significant level of be validated and even go further and check. Right. But I want us to come to, at some point, I want us to discuss Gen Zs, that whole workforce. I really want to discuss that. But there's something that as we all continue talking, Catherine talked about talking to a founder and trying to understand this founder and their mindset. And Manish talked about what he's trying to do as a business, and he also talked about his founders, because he's created mini founders or co-founders with him. And at Founders Battlefield, what we've been looking at is trying to connect the dots in terms of what makes an African founder operating system? You know, maybe use a Mac, maybe use a Windows. What is that thing that makes a Mac work? It's a OS, correct?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if in America, the Mac will work, right? But I could take you, Manish is an example. He's come from India. He came and worked for a Kenyan company. A Kenyan company or a global international Kenyan company, Africa company. Then now he set up an African business. So what was in his DNA? What was him? What was that Africa operating system that he's learned, okay, that is going to make him successful moving forward, right? And you had to bring a guy from, as you mentioned, I've got a Canadian, I've got this guy and this guy. What is that thing you're trying to put together called an Africa operating system? Because that is the operating system, I think, that is going to differentiate countries, even countries that make it with leadership and those that don't make it. Because it starts with that operating system. So what is that operating system as founders that we must start identifying? So at Founders Battlefield, one of the things we're trying to do is ascertain what is an Africa Founders Operating System. So by talking to you guys, it's going to be 40 episodes. Our hope is that by the time we are done, we'll have figured out what is an Africa Founders Operating System. Because listening to you, it's about understanding. And we sort of began breaking it down, and we looked at it. The first thing is mindset. It's your mindset. So even if you go and coach me, or even if you come to my business to do consulting, the first thing you have to figure out, this founder, what is the mindset? Scarcity versus abundance.
Abundance.
Yes.
Those two conversations with a founder makes a very big difference.
Yeah.
How he looks at the whole situation from a mindset point of view. The next thing is the emotional state. Okay? So their founders, their self-worth. Are they in this business? This business give them validation. Okay? Or are they in this business because it's a purpose, it's a contribution, it's a bigger ideation to it. So if you challenge their emotional state, which is their identity, they're going to fight you back, 100%. Okay? So the next thing we look at is strategic. How do they think about what they're doing? This is what we call our founders operating system looking. Strategic. Strategic could mean, how do they look at delegation? How do they look at risk, right? How do they look at timing? How do they look at those kind of things? So if you also need to understand as founder, how strategic are they? Because as you said, did you start this business out of necessity? Or did you start this business because you strategically figured it out and knew where my opportunity was from an innovation point of view or from even a competitive advantage? The next thing you're also looking at is social. You can go to an entrepreneur and find a founder and find socially he's amazing. That's how he's able to build his business. But another entrepreneur socially is poor, right? And social could also mean trust, team dynamics, understanding even how to deal with partners. Some of the stuff you're saying is really social. Knowing you can bury conversations. Socially, they'll still come up. You can say, okay, today I've won. Tomorrow I'll come back with this conversation and deal with you. So even socially, when people go out for a drink and you fight, you find eventually the guy who loses will still come back to the table and say, hey, I have to win. You see, that's a social conversation. And lastly, spiritual. Okay? Spiritual is about purpose, it's about legacy, it's about contribution. Because also, you have to understand, this founder you're dealing with, how does he look at the bigger part of life? How does he look at it? If I'm a billionaire here, or a millionaire here, I don't care about everything else. So I'm going to get the best from everybody, not the best. I'm going to squeeze everything from everybody to maximize my returns. So what we are finding is that having what we call this Africa Founders Operating System around those 5 elements, even if I look at them from a talent point of view, you can see how it starts becoming together. So if you start analyzing a founder around what we call our AFOS ecosystem, you'll start now determining what's my matrix for Manish. So everything you've said, I've been trying to evaluate your spiritual, okay, your emotional, how strategic you're thinking, your social, and also your mindset. So I think in summary, I can say I can almost know where you are in that radar, right? So even a decision to come and work with you, not even as a coach or even as a board member or advisory board member, will be informed by your level of maturity in that segment. Is that correct? Now, let's shift the conversation into something very interesting, which is competence versus attitude. Okay? And I'm going to throw this question to Farah in a very, very interesting way.
Okay.
You've got competence on one side of the graph and you've got attitude. So if somebody is highly competent and they have poor attitude, they are mercenary.
Yeah.
They're mercenary, and it's okay. Then if somebody has both high competence, high attitude, they are your gold star, correct? And then you have down here where you have got high attitude, high great attitude, and then low, mid-level competence. There are people you can nurture to bring to a certain point, right? Then if a guy with low competence and attitude, that one you just throw outside. But unfortunately, maybe they are relative, or they're committed to you by the person who gives you the biggest paycheck, okay, which is your customer, unfortunately. So how do you still? So my question to you is: in today's day and age, I could be the mercenary, sawa. And Manisha said, okay, that we hire for competency, okay, and we pay if somebody delivers. So if I'm a mercenary, if you're trying to recruit for me,
Yeah.
and you realize that the person you're about to give me is a mercenary, okay, vis-a-vis somebody who is on this graph, great attitude but doesn't have a competency, who do you recommend for me?
So, again, it also depends on the culture of where they're coming. Sometimes the culture is mercenary. And if you bring someone who's too nice, great attitude, they're not going to, and we've seen that. So first you got to look at where you're bringing them. And also there's ways, and we've spoken about it, there is some testing we can do to see how they fit. Where are they on this competence attitude? That's where performance testing comes in, and we run tests on our candidates. And I've run tests on myself, so it's not something, what I like to do on myself, I like to do for others. So I run a lot, I really believe in testing and different tests. So now with this whole thing, if you're gonna bring in a mercenary, in the end, even if they're your best star performer, from a competence, if they have a bad attitude, they're going to bring everyone down. In the end, it's going to corrode your culture. You're not going to be able to deal with them. And I think a lot of people face that issue, and they're going to bring toxicity around them. So if I was to advise between both, I think you can teach someone. You saw that. You train them. You bring someone on. Especially with startups, I think the attitude is what's important, because you want someone roll up their sleeves, do what you need, redesign, change things. And that competence could change. So it depends on competence for what. You're hiring competence to redesign. That's the competence you want, not competence in one area. And we already learned from the world of AI, competence is shifting. You need somebody who can change mindset, adapt, do those things. So that's what you're hiring for. Because the competence, as we talked earlier when I stated, you can go to school and be competent and finish things. That's what your degree will tell you. But in today's world, I shifted also my competencies to another area. So it's the ability to shift, redesign, re-innovate, and move with the needs of the organization. In a startup, it's very fast moving. It's changing constantly because there's always, and for the Africa landscape, when you do the Porter's 5 Forces in MBA school, government regulations is one of them. That's super here. Like, things can change tomorrow, right? And I found that working at Bridge International in the startup, the Constitution came in, it completely transformed the education landscape for the startup and what they were doing and their pricing and how they go to market. So I think to me, if I had to pick between the two, it's actually the person, and that's why I bring out of kind of the typical candidates, which is thinking through of what other person would work well for this organization, not this typical person. And thinking through those alternatives is really important. Even for the founder to sit there and go, okay, I know I want this person, but is there, in my kind of organization, a different person who would be a better fit? And then as an organization grows, maybe there's more specialization. But realistically, when you're a fast-moving startup, you need someone who's adaptable, changing, moving fast, growing fast, and can do anything and will do anything and is willing to learn. We live in a world now where I think we're moving away from specializations to more generalizations, to be able to do more different things and differently. And so I think that person with that mindset, and if they're too structured, they're not going to adapt well.
I think you've just, I'm going to give you a story, and I want to come to Catherine from a Gen Z point of view. And that whole issue about competency and mercenary and all that kind of stuff. I'll give you a small story. Last week, 2 weeks ago, my current business, which is Ponea, we made a decision last 1.5 years to go into a B2B space, okay? So and we tested the model. So we started now acquiring customers to take our platform as a SaaS platform because we'd invested so much money building the platforms. So you know what happens eventually before you change your business model, or you first do presentations and you see if it can be consumed. The content can be consumed by customers. So we saw customers are consuming. But the challenge then was we need to change our market-facing content platform, which is your website and all kind of stuff. And then the question was, it took me a long time to think, how do I get the complexity of what we do as Ponea? Because we build it as a B2B2C platform. Now we're trying to build it as a B2B. How do I tell somebody now, listen to me, you can still run this hotel? I had a vision of how the hotel should be, but I don't run the hotel. I want to tell you, I want to give you my hotel to run, and I give you software to run it. So, okay, so we are together so far. So I realized I had all the content, had everything, I had all the information. So I decided, okay, I need somebody to come and build this content. I know it's simple. In my mind, I'm very clear. I have all the content. It's industry specific by industry, whether it is insurance, it is healthcare, hospitals, it is TPAs, third-party transaction administrators for healthcare, even corporates who want healthcare. That is, to me, those are my industries. Technology-wise, we offer technology platforms for patients. So a patient can be a corporate patient, it can be a hospital patient, it can be an insurance patient. So I said I have the material, both vertical and horizontal. So information is there. Then on this side, there's AI, correct? That can consume all the content that I have. So I call these guys. I tell them, listen, guys, I want you guys, since you've helped me build this tech part, can you come, we spend 4 days, 5 days, 1 month, building what we call the front-facing platform. So, and I like what you talked about, attitude and competency. So I went to the competent guys. Okay, I told them, guys, come, let's do this. So they told me, you know, Mike, you know, boss, you know, now me, I treat them as arm's length because they're contractors. So they're mercenary. In one way, they can also be mercenary, okay? Mercenary contractors who come and do, not do, depending on how they feel. So we exchange. I told them I need a solution, a decision on how you want to proceed with this in 24 hours, right? So we spent. Then 2 days ago, I woke up, I couldn't sleep at around 4 o'clock. So I got up in the morning. I thought to myself, okay, I need to solve this problem. Okay, these guys are taking me around in circles. Is that correct? Taking me around in circles. I said, okay, we're going to deal with it. Manish, from a technology point of view, what you used to do for me 4 years ago, I went online. I said, can you give me a software development tool to build a knowledge-based content platform? I saw it. It gave me. Got my credit card, paid $50. Okay. I said, now listen, that's done. I looked at that, I said, this is all my content. Can you aggregate all my content such that vertically and horizontally, the content integrates in a way that you coming from healthcare can understand what I'm trying to offer you from a technology point of view. And if you come from a technology point of view, you can understand what I'm trying to offer you from a healthcare point of view. So far, we are together. Perfect. 100-page document summarized into 20 pages. Something called a product delivery, roadmap, product, PRD is called product development document, whatever it is, what they give software developers to develop software, correct? I told it, give me step-by-step model of how to build this. This is 4 o'clock in the morning, okay? This is 4 o'clock. These guys have been battling with these guys for the last 2 days. Give me. But they've been taking me this mercenary business. I said, okay, let's deal with this. So $50, $20, $40 into paid AI platform for content management. Now it's all, let me show you how to start building. I went paid subscription. I said, step by step, let's start building. Load, I think for it, he tells me, yeah, I can see. Because now this guy, the competency guy, has become a machine. Yeah. So he's behaving exactly how my mercenary guy would have behaved. I asked the question, it gives me an answer, but now this guy doesn't have attitude or he's doing what he has to do, believe it or not. I began building this at 4. a.m., okay? 8 o'clock I had to do other things, so I left my house. So I got the software tool. I downloaded the app on the mobile. So I'm doing in traffic. My driver is there. I'm just changing. It's asking me questions. I'm saying, chukua hi, deal with this. I ask this other system, do it. Let me tell you, I started at 4 a.m. Traffic, rain. You know how you're sitting in traffic for 2 hours. I finally launched the platform. If you look at it, it could have been developed anywhere in the world. With anybody, it has every information that I need is on that platform. At how much? $50, which was my subscription. $50 on this other side, and my commitment, my personal attitude to say, I'm going to do this. Is that correct? So now, what has happened to me overnight? I've totally changed my view on how software can be built. And I believe there's so much we can do now that I've figured out it's doable. So all your crazy thoughts that you ever used to think I have to give another guy to think for me, I'm not doing that anymore. I know it can be done. So long as AI tells me this is possible, I will do it. Now, what has happened, and I really like your answer, what you said that you will always have for attitude more than competence. Because AI all of a sudden has made competent guys no longer bankable. You don't have to be competent. What is this you're telling me? What I need is attitude. Be able to wake up in the morning at 4 o'clock and say, I will try. Is that correct? Yes. So that was a very interesting, I want to give you that story. It just happened. And Manish, when you guys have time, you can go to Ponea.tech. Ponea.tech. That whole platform, everything you see, everything has been built by me and some 2 developers, and my decision to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, which I would have still been waking up anyway, or not decided to wake up between 4 and 6 o'clock. So, and that interesting then brings me to Catherine, and that I think answers the question on competence. I hope guys can understand, and I hope this becomes an aha moment for many guys who, or even Gen Zs, or even millennials who sometimes think that their competency is currency for you to hold people ransom, even entrepreneurs ransom.
Well, on that though, as an example, in the legal field, right? So we operate by templates, right? I used to have a template for a demand letter, and then I would edit it. Now you go to AI, and so our lawyer is going to be not needed other than the strategy of the law, right? So again, I can now go to AI, or you can go do your demand letter. You don't have to come to me to do an easy demand letter. So competencies that were traditional competencies are now in question. And that's why being a generalist and be able to now work with AI, work with the changing environment of intelligence, right? With artificial and current intelligence is what's key for all organizations of all size.
You know what you've said, and as we go to Catherine, then we start looking at our key takeaways. You know, I had a lawyer who did some work for me, and I told her, recently, I told her, first she was pissed off because I told her about AI. She's pissed off. So I decided, okay, fine, it's okay. She told me, you can go use AI, Mike. I said, no problem, no issues. So now what I do, when I give an AI a legal brief, okay, which is simple, not very complex brief. If it's rental agreement or leasing agreement, you know what I do? I go tell it, here's a sample legal agreement. It's another sample agreement. It's another sample legal agreement. Do for me a template. These are my thoughts. Use the Kenyan law. Tell me what are the possible risks. Address the risks in this document, blah, 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 blah. I take the document, I send it to a lawyer and say, do your final check and send for signature.
Yes. Look at how much you saved.
Yeah. I said, by the way, listen, if they tell me the fee is this, I just said, bring it back, okay? Just do power. Just sign there as whatever you need to sign off. I'll pay you for that. So you see, now what we need is a lawyer who can immerse themselves in my business, not just become a lawyer. Is that correct?
Exactly.
So that has changed the job profile. And then now coming back to Gen Zs. Now, let's look at from a Gen Z point of view. I think it's a very important conversation we need to have. They have the tools. They don't have that, let me walk through your door kind of conversation anymore. They have also realized they have got a voice, but they need to speak as a communal voice. They don't necessarily come individually, they come together. So it means if you have got 20, 50 Gen Zs or 100 Gen Zs like Manish, if he's not careful, they can make up an all walk out of his office one day. Is that correct? How do you manage? What do you advise? How do you manage? No, I don't have any. I don't not even think the question is manage.
Yeah.
I want to say, throw it out there. Gen Z equals talent, equals competence, equals culture, whatever. What about that?
My feeling is, I sometimes feel Gen Zs are a bit misunderstood because for most people, they are way ahead of their time and they're very loyal to each other. And when they know, they know. But they don't like being mishandled. I feel they're a bit delicate. So you have to learn how, in my opinion, how to handle these delicate people. But they also, I feel now they should shift. It's their time to shift because, like you said, AI will come in. What you have to quietly handle a Gen Z to do, wait on him to decide my mental health. They're big on mental health. My mental health, this is not the time to do this, will be taken over. So I think Gen Zs just, they need to change. They themselves, their culture needs to a bit now change because the world is changing. They're very competent with using the AI tools, but their, how do we call it? Their personalities, their entitlement is a bit much. They need to change that. But also, we need to change to be able to tell them, okay, you can take your health day, but deliver. Like he says, if you come 6 to 1, you finish your work and you can go and do whatever else you want. So I feel Gen Zs, we have to mollycoddle them a bit. We sometimes don't have time for that, and they might miss out a lot because of their attitude. So like I keep going back, it is culture change, it is coaching, it is mentoring, it is the ability, the personality themselves to tell themselves, we need to change. I have Gen Zs in my house, and I feel they're a bit different because of the culture in the house. You have to work, there's no excuse. But a lot of them are, even in school, you can cheat on your paper, you can get away with a lot of stuff. So that competency, but let's say the attitude, I think, is what Gen Zs need to change. I'm not battering them, but their attitude is needs a bit working on. And they don't know better until we show them.
But if they wake up, if a Gen Z's, their life is to wake up and find politicians insulting each other, online people insulting each other, get rich schemes, quick, let's go. How do we expect these Gen Zs? Who are their role models? If around us, everything we see, there's so much chaos, okay? We almost have lost our identity. Is that correct?
I agree with you.
The other day, I was talking to some Gen Zs. I asked them, what do you guys want to be? They told me they want to do politicians. I said, hey, stop jokes. The guy says, I want to do politicians. I said, why? But it's only path that I see, I can make money. I said, okay, interesting. That's what they see, correct? That's what they're affiliate with. So how and maybe it's to Manish and Farah, you guys deal with Gen Zs, or you're even trying to hire a Gen Z manager. You're trying to hire a manager in a company where you're going to have a lot of Gen Zs. Okay?
Yeah.
How do you manage that? How is the job brief? How you manage it? Because I would imagine your business, you have a lot of Gen Zs. How are you managing that? Okay? Because at the end of the day, I say, if you go to the ocean with a boat with a sail, okay, you will go towards the wind. Is that correct? Yes. Where the wind blows. Mm-hmm. So whether you like it or not, whether you like the Gen Zs, whether they have attitude or not, there's an attitude, there's a wind, there's the way the wind is blowing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So you have to choose what your steering capacity is.
Can I just say something?
Sure.
You asked one question, who are the role models? Uh-huh. And like the way we have sat here, they can see, apart from politicians, there's Mr. Manish, he has managed to do this.
That is the first time he's coming.
Yeah,
to
that's
talk
what
about
I'm
it.
saying. So my point here is we need the role models to come out a bit more. You know, the politicians are there out and loud, but like we go to a lot of TVETs, we go to schools, and just quietly try and change that attitude. Who are your role models? We also try and put people coming directly from schools. And I started with my own children. Before you go into university, you go and do work somewhere. We want to be we say in a bank. I talk to a banker friend. Let these people, don't pay them, maybe feed them lunch, but let them come, work, know, can we fit into this culture? It's a slow thing, but I think it would be good if every Kenyan, every organization said, I would like 5, 6 people I can mentor, and they get into that culture of working well, but because they have actually no role models that we can think of and sing about. There are very few. But if the founders, if the corporates came out and said, this is our culture. We would like our next generation, instead of hiring from a culture that is so free-falling, you say, when you come from school, our interns, before they go to university, we would like 2, 3 people to just come. And I've seen that work very well with the people I've taken and put. They can see you have to work hard. Then you also have that experience. Every time you're on holiday, you're going to that company. I think that is a good way of doing.
So we are back to my year 2002
Exactly.
way of working.
Exactly.
How life works.
And
How
that
life works.
And that it worked, didn't it?
It did, but I think maybe that's why we've come from.
Yes, exactly.
It became quite intimate.
Yeah.
So I want to comment a bit on this whole Gen Z. So realistically, in my world, I'm dealing with CEOs at a level where we're not seeing a lot of Gen Zs that are, that I'm working in and bringing into those roles. But that doesn't mean I don't interact with Gen Zs. But in my first comments to this, I think it's understanding Gen Zs and where they are now in the changing, I'd call it the employment revolution maybe as well. Because, now with, we've got influencers who make a lot more money than coming into these traditional structures. So what you talked about, in our generation, we were to get a job and follow this matrix and this is the way it works, but they don't need to enter. So it's really an employment revolution per se. It's changing things, but we see that in governance as well. And it's about stakeholder engagement, inclusiveness. And so before, I think when you worked in the boardroom or if you're a CEO, you really weren't taking in as much from down up from your employees. The Gen Zs are forcing us to be stakeholder inclusive, and really the world is moving that way. Corporate governance is moving that as well, and we learned that in COVID. So I think the first thing is consciousness for companies that we now need. It's not a one-way communication down. We talked about communication. Gen Zs really want the communication up. The dealing with Gen Zs from what's coming out a lot in best practices are really engaging with them. So having someone at HR really taking the time, where you're growing, how does this fit into your larger framework? They're a lot more holistic in how they view things. It's not just about going to the workplace and coming out. That cult you were building, they kind of want, they want the cult, they want to feel appreciated, they want to be valued. So it's a very different worker that we're dealing with. And so first is understanding the difference, and is your organization ready for boards and organizations that have startups that are really having products that go to Gen Zs, really having them on your board. I mean, it's really important to get that feedback. So I think greater understanding of how best to incorporate Gen Zs. So my tips would be around really taking the time to understand how this is a changing worker in the workforce and in your organization. And the onboarding has to be a lot more involved. You can't just get the person in and let them sink or swim. I think it requires more hand-holding and more attention to Gen Zs than in our generation when you were onboarding.
Oh, fantastic. So interesting. Certain things that touched my mind there in terms of onboarding, I think very important, as you mentioned. I think a dialogue between top and down and up and down, top down and bottom up, those are very interesting conversations. And the issue of role models, which we need to become role models, or we need to be step up more And Manish, because I want us to now wrap up from a point of view eventually, just your touch on Gen Zs, especially you're placing these Gen Zs in global universities. What's your experience even as you place them in these global universities, right? I'm not sure if you've finished the life cycle of any of your students that you've placed that have come back. I would like to know if they've come back, if you're placing them back into the job system in Kenya. How is that going?
So Gen Z is it's 20 something, right?
Yeah.
It's 20 something. I think I don't know why we have created this entire conversation on Gen Z, to be honest. I mean, if you look at the greatest companies built in the world, they've been built by Gen Zs. I mean, look at what was the age of Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Elon Musk.
But it's not the age, it's not an age.
Yeah.
It's the season.
When they were born.
When
it's
they
the
were
year
born.
they're born.
It's not an
Okay,
age
it's
issue.
not the age.
It's not an
It's not
age
the
issue.
It's not the age.
Yes.
Okay.
Because a 25-year-old person in the year 2000 behave very differently
Yeah,
from one
it's
today.
their 20s now, but
Yeah,
there
up
are
to
different
20,
20s
up
than
to
we were
27,
20s or when
yes.
Steve
Okay, so
Jobs
you're saying the
was
20s today are
Today.
different from the 20s.
Very, it has
in the
evolved
past.
because technology is available, information is available.
So they're a lot more efficient.
Yeah,
for
lateral
example.
thinking is available.
Yeah. What
Not
do you see a
efficient.
difference? I mean, maybe you don't see it.
Yeah, no,
He
I-
doesn't
I-
see a
yeah,
difference.
I don't see a difference between the 20 something today and the 20 something before.
So you're telling me you 25.
We had some entitled kind of brats at our 20s. We had some really smart, diligent, hardworking kind of risk takers in our 20s. And I seen like both sides of people in our 20s and the same 20s.
Interesting.
Like I don't see a difference. That's why it just
Incredible.
makes me uncomfortable like to have this conversation on Gen Zs because like we've been put in. Okay, think about the biggest revolution that has happened in this country recently. Who led that revolution? Was it not Gen Zs? They were Gen Zs, right?
And
I mean, look at the courage these guys had. Were people like at our age doing anything about it? No. It was Gen
No,
Zs who
but
stepped
also,
on.
but also,
a lot of
in,
Gen Zs
but
stepped
also
on
in
the,
Matiba time, in that olden time, also we had the
Of
Gen
course, of
Zs.
course. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Orengo was
That
a Gen
did
Z, I
Gen
guess.
Zs like did something incredible. I mean, they allowed themselves to be, put themselves in a line of fire, and they left everything and they got. So look, I have a different opinion. I think I think it's just categorization like an entire generation of people into a one single set of values is not fair. That's my view. I think people are individuals across generations who behave in certain ways based on who they are as individuals. So I generally do not. I try my best not to categorize people into kind of sets of mindsets, especially when you're talking about an entire generation of people. You're not even talking about like a small set. You're saying this whole Gen Z is like this. Because I have seen, every positive and negative of a Gen Z that we talk about in my 20s also. I mean, I did some foolish things when I was 20 as well. I mean, I had a sense of entitlement at some point of my life for sure. When I became a very young CEO, I had a sense of entitlement. I wanted an office. I wanted certain comfort. So that's my view of it. I think 85% of, I think 90% of our organization is Gen Zs, from that perspective. Incredible bunch of people. Some people did not do a great job, and we had a conversation with them, and some were let go, and some were kind of like coached upwards. So I don't have like a strong opinion on I have just positive things to say, generally speaking, and I typically as a leader would take more blame on myself if a so-called Gen Z working under me is not kind of performing. I think it's more of my responsibility. Did I bring in the wrong person? Did I bring the wrong person in the wrong job? Or did I not coach them enough? Or did I not onboard them well enough? Did I not set the expectations right? So I don't kind of look at things from that lens at all. This Gen Z generation and it's a generation of 1 billion plus people. How do we characterize them as one microcosm of attitudes and competence? I don't know. I can't do that.
That's an interesting view, but that's why it's great to be here, because every view it could be an academic conversation of Gen Z. It could be as structural as you're saying. It depends. It's just your lens on how you see anything, and there's no right or wrong about it. I think my take on Gen Z is, for me, it's about inspired leadership that is extremely authentic. I think if you try and inspire and you're dishonest, then Gen Zs will hate you. if you try and be dishonest, okay? So you try and even be honest and you're not inspirational, they also don't want you. So you have to choose which part. You have to. I think there has to be a level of inspiration, okay? And even if you're not inspirational and you're honest, then be a doer. Make sure you say what you say you will do, you do. You see, I can be inspiring and honest, but maybe I'm not a doer. So I need to get somebody else to come and do. But you can also be a doer and honest, but not necessarily inspirational, which is okay. That's a combination that you need. So I think as CEO, if you're going to hire Gen Zs, you need to ask yourself, what am I? Am I an inspiring leader that is honest? Am I an inspiring leader that is dishonest? And they'll come and cause chaos in your place. Am I not necessarily inspiring, I'm okay, but I'm honest, but I make sure I execute what I say I'll do.
I think what's coming through, sorry, on that is it sounds like, or it's
my opinion, that is.
Yeah. But it appears that in a culture, integrity is coming as the top piece.
It is.
But for Gen
new
Zs,
culture,
what you say is what you should do.
Exactly.
That is the bottom line. You say you will do, they will hold you to account as we let things slide, But you say you will do, I will do this for you, or our company does this. 3 months the line somebody's leaving because what you've said is not what you're doing. So I think Gen Z is that part of integrity, they have it. But it is everything, I think the work ethic, and that is teachable. There are a few things that I agree with him. At 25, you didn't know. But if you're willing to learn, you can do it. But you have to be authentic. Inspiration, I don't think much inspires them. Apart from people who've made a lot of money, I see that is very inspirational. Whether you're a politician or a movie star, money is also a very big thing to Gen Zs, I think. Maybe I'm wrong, but
can I say, who's money not a big thing to? Like, I'm a millennial, right? Like, technically speaking, is money not a big thing to millennials? You guys talked about, being inspired, being authentic, and being a doer, right? Mm-hmm. Does a millennial? It's like if I was working, and would I not want? I'm a millennial, so would I not want my boss to be authentic, inspirational, and doer? Like, I would also want that. Maybe they're being more vocal about it. Maybe they're more vocal about it, and as you said, maybe we'll live with it, and they will not live with it, which is a great thing, right? Like, we want people in this world who are not willing to live with inauthenticity and people who are not doers and people who are not inspirational. So it's a great thing that they don't let it slide. So I think the standards that organizations have to hold to themselves have become higher because of the Gen Zs, right?
Yes.
Which is a fantastic thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think what the difference between the two generations, or whatever generations we say, is velocity of information.
Yeah, which is actually
the velocity of information now is at its highest. Velocity.
Yeah.
No one's down by velocity.
Yeah, I know.
The time it moves from you said to I had, it's moving at a rapid pace.
Yeah.
The velocity of the world, how we see the world, is also at its another level you can't even say.
Yeah.
When I was in a 20, the velocity of information is something could be said today, I know it in 6 months. So I have forgotten, I've healed.
Yeah.
So today you don't have time to heal.
Yeah.
Because the moment I insult you online, I'm not healing. I can insult you back. It's not those days I would send you a letter, it takes a month to come. Then by the time I respond to it, even I've cooled down. To me, the velocity of engagement is at its highest.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
That the velocity has come at, and then now, information now all of a sudden has become at the fingertips.
Yeah.
I can structure, I can write, I can research. You can send me a 50-page document. I decide, what is this? I don't want it. I can take the contract you're telling me. There's so much that's at our fingertips today, which was not there. And that's the only difference, to be honest, right? Between the two setups of humans.
No, absolutely.
So then the conversation of how you looked at capital, how we flaunted wealth. In 20 years ago, even our parents, nobody wanted to say, you'd see a few guys with big Mercedes-Benz, but they would keep them to themselves. Today, your Mercedes-Benz there is on your Instagram, on your face like this, like I've just bought this, whatever. That's the difference.
Yeah,
our aspiration
that's
of what we wanted.
To see why are they doing this? They are doing this because they're looking for validation because they're not getting that validation. Number one, you have to also understand that in our times, 100% of my relationships were physical. Today, 85%
They're digital.
are digital. Like any person that you ever talked to, like if you look at all the conversations you had in the last 1 week, I promise you 90% of all your conversations were digital. They were not. So they are socially isolated. That's the only world they live in. Because also, in our times, I started in a joint family. So we had like 16 kind of like people in one house. Today we have 4 in one house. People started moving out. They wanted independence. They wanted space. So they started moving out. So they isolated themselves. They isolated their kids. The biggest challenge today, I see with my kids is a sense of isolation. It's just not having enough social kind of currency around them. And of course, always then seeking validation. So hence they're doing the social media because we brought them in this world where the only way they could make friends is on social media, and the only way they could talk to people. And you talked about role models, like what are we role modeling, If we are, Mike, you're different, I really appreciate you. You create like these physical spaces. So don't get me wrong there, but when they see, we are talking to our friends on WhatsApp, this is the mindset that, they are setting up. So I think like, I really like Gen Z. I think I have the best things to say about them. Also,
I love Gen Z.
No, but
I'm
just
just
say that
saying,
Gen Z, but then we need to move, forward. Don't move forward because Gen Z is Gen Z. We have talked. You yourself has agreed that we're in a time when things from 16 in a house, 4 in a house.
Yeah.
That is it's called. That's how they
classify. That's why it is.
Yeah. But we need to move on. I think because this is going to be the longest show, which is fine. Because it's really to do with humans, which is okay, right? It's not capital, it's not money in the bank. And I think we need to move towards your what you call your key takeaway or what your key reflection was. It's a very important part of this conversation because in all our podcasts, this is where people really even want to record this session. So we want to close in the next 20 minutes with very clear, crisp conversation of how you see this whole conversation, why it's gone. I think we've been across the world. We've talked about hiring Gen Zs, founder problems, hiring. Tumekuwa pali mingi. We have been many places. So we need to wrap this up with that 20 minutes. So for me to help you close this is for you to start having personal reflection about how to close this. For me, the way I look at it, everything you said came through to me through. I sort of remembered something by Tim Robbins. Tim Robbins talks about the 6 fundamental steps that give you belonging, that make you belong. Okay, Tim Robbins, and you can then create 6 of these into any. You can rank them based on how you view life. Okay, the first one is growth. How do you see growth? How important is it to you in your value chain? So you can rank how I rank mine and how you rank yours determines how I view life, okay? And how I want life to be. Second one is contribution. Growth, contribution. Third is certainty. How much do you want? Some people, I don't give a damn about growth. They'd rather be certain. I'm receiving this paycheck. Hiyo mambo ya growth mwache huko, mweke huko kwenyu. So the next one is contribution. Anything you do in life, do you see yourself contributing? Some people, so long as they're contributing within for themselves, the rest, I don't care. Is that correct?
Yeah.
The next one is what we call love and connection. The love and connection is about how I feel, my human connect to people, love and connection, right? And then the other one, I think, is significance. The massive significance. So anything you do, how significant is? You said, I think you just said something. You said, Mike, you're different. It's good you're doing this. See, the way you said it in a very interesting way can already explain to you how I rank my top 6.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking it's my responsibility to be in this show for the next generation of people. It is my responsibility. Because I don't think there's somebody somewhere who would never have access to me, but they'll have access to us through this platform. So I think just by doing this, my contribution to our society is significant just by doing what we're doing. You get my point? I could have just sat home. I could have said, we don't need to be here. You decided to show up, okay? You said to show up. Why? Because, and you'll see how it gives back. It's because your conversation you had today could change a whole. There are people somewhere who would never meet you, will never meet you, but finally they've heard from you. So for me, my takeaway from this is that for you to build the next generation of talent, you need to figure out in those 6 dimensions where you are. If I don't care about growth, if I don't care about contribution, if contribution is my lowest, if for me the first thing is certainty, then even people who work for me, so long as I get my return, myself, as Michael, you don't have to grow. Why would I put you in a guest house? Why would I make sure that I keep empowering you? I don't own you. 5 years later or 6 months later, even 2 years, you leave my employment. And I've put, I pumped 2 million shillings on you. So long as you help me grow in that time, I'm fine. Does that make sense? That's my final takeaway. So it just gave me a validation it just may give me a little bit clarity of thought in terms of how to look at talent, even if I'm sitting with another board member, because a board member also with me, even advisory board member, is also talent. If I'm looking for you to come and work with me as an advisory board member, it is just a different, in quotes, executive talent I'm bringing in my company indirectly. So if I don't align with you, if the first thing you want as a board member, advisory board member, is certainty, past pesa iko happy, then surely. And me, I'm looking for growth. I'm looking for certainty. We're already far apart. So that's the kind of takeaway we want to sort of think through, such that when somebody thinks and says, okay, how was that? How did those guys impact me? It's also a personal reflection to say, what is it? It doesn't matter. It can be anything. You can even jump, start and dance and say, I started dancing after this show. It's okay also, right? Okay? So over to anybody who is ready to do this.
So key takeaways from it.
Yes, not takeaway, but really is your internal reflection.
Yeah.
Something that we don't know. It's not about it, but it's about just for you to bring out that.
Yeah. I can share.
Sure.
If you guys, okay. I can share some reflections. I think, I had a really long journey in my life, kind of like working with a lot of people. And I think I like to use this term that I learned in kind of McKinsey ways called strong opinions loosely held. So you kind of like you're clear where you want to go, but the way you can go there, you may be flexible to change. And I built some strong opinions, but I still retain flexibility to kind of learn more. Number one is that I think, stop seeing kind of people who work in your office as resources and see them more as kind of human beings. And human beings function the same way they function at home and they function at workplace. They're the same people. People generally want to be inspired. That's what we've seen. That works a lot. We've seen, we look for people who have an abundance mindset rather than a scarcity mindset. I think that's really been a big difference for us. Number 3 is that understand the context that they're coming from. So they could be coming from an organization that had a very different culture from the way you had a culture. So don't expect them to change overnight. Interview well, onboard them well, show them both the best sides of working with your place, because you want to inspire the best people to work with you, but also show them the not so glorious parts of working with you as an organization and also as you as a CEO. Performance reviews, make them continuous and not annual. Reward people handsomely, pay them above market, and incentivize, really well incentivize people who are doing well for you. So as I said, in our organization, we either give you a really big bonus and a very big jump or not. So yeah, so I think, and I think, one of the things that the last thing I would say is that, I tell people that, we work like this, you are, so we are all connected together to achieve this one mission, but we are like this, we are not like this. I'm not like here and you are here, because you are performing a role that I can't perform. And I'm performing a role that you can't perform. For this organization to be successful, you need to perform what you're doing, which I cannot do today. Because some of the technical stuff that my team does, I'm not even competent at that. And some of the stuff that I do, they can't do that. So we work together. You play a role, I play a role, we do this together. So I think I like the circular kind of org structures rather than hierarchical, we don't have an organogram in our office.
But for you, what's your takeaway? Me, I understand that from a business point of view, I get it. I think I want to know you as Manish. I want to leave here knowing from this conversation, I understand technically what you need to do as a manager, whatever. I want to know you. What's your takeaway? Not technical.
My takeaway, which is not.
Don't have to answer. We can wait for you. We can get Catherine to do. We'll come back to you. I don't want to, the other
Maybe
stuff
if you
of
can just
business, I
explain
get
a
it.
little bit more, like what do you
You
mean?
see,
when
at
you
the end
say-
of the day, we started by saying it's a founder conversation.
Yeah.
It's not an employee conversation.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, what I mentioned to you, like the founder's operating system, you've got those 5 variables.
Yeah.
Your emotional state, your spiritual state, right? Maybe my argument could be, I need to be more spiritually engaged, okay?
Okay.
With the people I work
Got
with.
it, got it,
Understand?
got it.
I just need to feel
Got
that
it.
I have a soul. Is that correct?
Got it.
I have. But some people could say, for the first time, I figure out maybe it's time I don't become so transactional. I become feeling. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Right? For you, your takeaway. But Catherine, we'll come back to you. Because if you're not done, we'll do it until we get to you, until you crack it.
Okay, my biggest takeaway is that I'm in the right space, number one. And everything revolves around human beings. Sometimes systems can take over. Sometimes everything is human. Everything is human, even the machine, whatever they can do. So in the space that I am in, my takeaway is maybe I have to listen more to the customer, the person who wants to employ, and to the employee, and bridge that gap in a better way. Because I've understood a few things that were missing in the way we do things. Because we have to look at the holistic company and which human is going to fit, both the founder and the employee. He's saying he didn't like the term human resource, but I think humans are the greatest resource we have. So I think they should just be treated as a great resource. That's my takeaway.
Great. I think that's an interesting, because Farah talked about founders. Sometimes she talked about that we don't take enough time to understand the founder's business. And I think you've taken her advice. Maybe your biggest take is
Yes, exactly.
she gave you the biggest she gave you the biggest gift is to say, maybe for the first time I'll take a back step and say, before I consult, let me first understand this founder
Exactly.
and the business. Because maybe I'll be able to create best value. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Farah?
Oh, so many takeaways. So this being your legacy, I think for me to think about what is my legacy and
Yes.
what do I leave behind. And, I'm working on my own brand, which is a holistic brand of mind, body, soul. And while in my fitness brand, of course, it's all about consciousness and how you do things in a conscious way. But I think leadership and entrepreneurship is also about conscious leadership. So I always like to see everything translate. And a lot of the things I do as an athlete, I relay back into workspace and the same thing. So I think it's also a good exercise, again, here in cross-cultural dynamics and different people from different environments, same problems, same issues, but I think being conscious about how you are moving through in a place that is driving your income. You spend a lot of time there, and being more conscious and intentful in how you're doing it. So, yeah, I mean, I sit I dabble both. I'm an entrepreneur, but work with companies. So I'm not coming from the strictly entrepreneurial. And of course, today's conversation, I went back on my whole journey getting here, and it did help me, I guess, reinstate. So the values I believed that you need working in an entrepreneurial venture are still the same. And so it was good to revisit that. The takeaway from this is, I think build what works for you. I think you've done a lot of things very creatively, and that's what entrepreneurship is. And I try to do that within my business and what is kind of a tough economy around search, because search is about educating people. Why, and even we talk about it, why would you need someone like myself to come to you and work with you? But it's also reaching out when you need help. I think entrepreneurs don't do enough of that. One of the things that I know we didn't talk a lot about in talent, which as a parting thing, I would like to leave behind is really wellness and mental health around entrepreneurs. And I think it's going to come up in another show. But that's another thing I look at. Today's leaders, and whether they're Gen Zs or whatever they are, the environment is a lot tougher as an entrepreneur. The environmental dynamics are different. You know, gone are the days when you can just sit in your office. You need to be agile. So not only mentally, but physically. And that's something that didn't come across today. And I think we need a lot more conversation around that, around successful leaders, especially entrepreneurs. There's such a drain on your body, your mind, your emotion, your spirit when you're working in an organization like this. And so I think that's something that I still feel is something we need to talk a lot more about as a takeaway as well.
Fantastic. I think what is important is you mentioned going back into your life and looking and sort of doing the journey. That's what, when I said we were going to do this, at the end of 2 hours, you're going to feel like therapy.
How did I get here? And do I define myself as an entrepreneur? What am I? Where am I? Who am I? And,
exactly. And you're quiet. You realize, despite all of us talking, there's a lot of going in your mind, right? And something you mentioned about mental wellness, it's one of the topics we have coming up.
Yes.
Because both in terms of entrepreneurs thinking they're immortal, thinking like nothing will ever happen to me.
Succession planning.
Like, what will happen? Number two is all looking at the issue of mental health. We go through a lot of turbulence. One of the interesting sessions we have the next show is about how to rebuild when everything is lost. And I know when my next show, when we're having this conversation with those founders, they've gone through a lot. And I know this issue of mental is going to come up, because if you, at that point, if you can't build with a mental state, right, that is right, and management, there's going to be a problem. So that's something we're going to be talking to, because I think it's very important.
Not only the leaders, but the talent you're hiring. You need to have those support systems. And when looking at your talent that you're hiring, again, look at people that have that experience, that grit, that ability to be resilient. So those are the kind of people that we're looking for in today's world now. You know.
But even as we go to Manish before I close, one of the questions you've mentioned about looking for people who are resilient and grit. One of the things that I found that works is, I don't know, we talked about it earlier. We used to do something called psychology. We used to have a psychologist in-house, and they would sort of do a psychological analysis of people before we hire them. And we found that the inherent soft issues are so misaligned to your culture that even if they got there, it's realigning them would be so difficult.
Yeah.
How they view things, trauma, or what happens. What happens? You'd have to sort of remodel your company for them. And yet you can't do that. For every employee, you can't be modeling your company. Wewe sasa umekuja Catherine, tuchape Panel B TV. Manish has come, let's realign the company. If the company has got these rails, how do you make sure the guys who jump into the bandwagon onto that rail are the right people, not trying to re-engineer the rail? Because sometimes I think somebody is so good, you want to get that talent in so bad, you try and re-engineer the rail for them.
Yeah, it's called falling in love with the candidate. It happens all the time.
Exactly. So that's something that we should all align on. Manish, as we wrap up.
My key takeaway from these sessions, I think what was interesting was just hearing perspective from the outside. Sometimes you get too caught up in your own thoughts, and you get too fixated and in love with your own thoughts. I think just hearing kind of external perspectives on the same topics was very interesting for me. I think I didn't know anything about your journey. I think I know you from Ponea days onwards. But I think some of the things that you did, which is kind of hiring young talent from the campus, building them, creating that kind of fraternity around them with housing, etc., is something I deeply admire, because I'm a huge believer and champion of kind of young talent. And we also have hired, fresh from campus, and we've seen great value with that. But I think like your journey itself was like, because I've seen you when you kind of already kind of peaked on your success, or not, let me not say peaked on your success, you kind of on the top, one of the top areas of your success, sorry.
I think my success
at the summit of your success. But I think like I've not seen the journey, that I didn't know anything about Rwanda and what you did Rwanda and everything. So that for me is, I generally feel very inspired by stories like these. And I think a lot of my reading has been readings on autobiographies and biographies. So I'm sure your story will make for a fascinating autobiography as well as someday. But yeah, I think like for me, it's just like generally different perspectives, because I do feel that I can be very guilty of being very fixated and absorbed in my own thoughts. And given that it has worked for you in the past, you feel like it's always going to work for you. So just hearing perspectives from Catherine and Farah has been kind of illuminating.
I'm happy. Thank you for that. I think finally, I think what you've said is sometimes you can fall in love with what you think you know, which is great. Which part of it is just being vulnerable to know. Sometimes you don't know. You know, but sometimes you think you know, but you realize you don't know
Someone
you know.
said something very interesting. He said, sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. That also is something that is great. But I guess part of our journey as we give stories through others, right? I wouldn't sit in a TV and give this story. I cannot give this story in context of what I said today, context to this conversation. Is that correct? But also what we want is to see more case studies in our schools. The way you're driving your talent in your organization is something you need to go and put in a case study.
Yes.
I think leaving it there by itself, there's also a case law school. Many of those business schools have got case law. Start documenting it. You don't have to be an Apple to document, right? Yeah. Start having these conversations, because some of these business schools we are going to, I don't want to talk about Coke and who did what. Those are things that don't even make sense to me anymore. Like, okay, whatever, right? Let's start documenting, because the more we document our case studies there, and you don't have to have raised $50 million, $100 million so that people can come and do a case study. I think we need to challenge the status quo and say, even we're willing to create our own case law organization where we write our case laws. We say, okay, here's our case law, which university is willing to adopt it. Because do we have to wait for a university to do a case law? Maybe it's for us to build a case law, a founder's case law, and say, we just need a rubber stamp, whichever university. If the guy comes from New Mexico,
is there something else coming from this group next? Is this a mandate?
Yes, we are hoping we can do that, because my hope is that we don't have to wait for those guys, academicians, to come and tell us we need to do our case studies. Let's do our case studies. And anybody in the world wants to come and rubber stamp it.
Actually, this really interesting thing that you said, which I did not reflect on, which is, what you're truly actually doing is you're building the operating system for founders.
That's what I'm doing, yes.
So that I think, like I saw what you're doing, but like the moment you kind of define it as like an operating system for founders, I think it makes so much sense, because once you build an operating system, you can transport it anywhere in the world. And I didn't kind of like connect the dots in the way that you probably have already done in your head. Like just to be part of creating that operating system in Africa, because none exists today. Every founder is learning, from scratch. There is no kind of case studies, as you said. All the case studies and books I've read is all of kind of like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. So well done, Mike. I mean, this operating
legacy,
system.
And 100%, I think you got it and you connected the dots.
Yeah.
We believe that building our Africa founder operating system is our responsibility. And if our legacy says that together we build it, because we cannot build individually.
Yeah.
It's your story, story. Then we put it together, and that becomes, oh my God, this is how it works. And if you leave the next generation of Africans understanding how to build, so they don't have to go through the whole journey again, the same rail again. You know somewhere you're going to derail, and you clearly know you're going to derail. Why do you have to wait for me to derail? Why?
And it'll be very interesting for you to upload all of the episodes onto ChatGPT and say, create a founder operating system based on all of the stories. It'll be so interesting to see what comes out of it.
What you've said also, the journeys are different. So somebody could get from one founder or from one story something they also never thought about. So that bringing together those case studies can help different people in different parts of their journey.
Agreed.
Yeah, so I think it's a great idea. I think what you're doing is a great thing, because even the previous episodes, I always glean something from what has been said by somebody. And that helps, remove a few rough edges just by listening to the podcast.
And Catherine, interesting also to tell you something as we wrap up. One of the things one of the areas you can maybe look at, and I think one of the things founders are trying to do is, I listen to Manish. Fine, he's building his business. Farah is building her business. You're building your business. So he has got some knowledge but it's all around his business. It's all around his business. And for me, the way I look at it is, and what I'm going to try and encourage founders, is within that community, which is your business, the knowledge you have, if you keep it there, you don't sharpen it. Because it becomes you're drinking your own Kool-Aid for some time. You're not even sure, you're just going. So my hope is that one day we can have a platform, which we hope to have soon, where you, Manish, I'm going to put your capabilities in our platform. Farah is going to be on our platform. Catherine is going to be our platform. Catherine goes to pitch, okay, in Ghana. And she realizes she needs you to co-pitch with her. Because sometimes that means that she's about to pitch for a big project. And you know you need to get into Ghana. You've never been to Ghana, and it's an opportunity. So why don't you guys team up? You have the skills to help her pitch. Because maybe the CEO she needs to pitch to will listen to you from that point of view before she gets in to do her job. It allows you into that market. So you have to learn to co-innovate together to create value. You get my point?
Interesting.
Trust me, if you take me to a meeting with you, to first do your first pitch and your first architecture meeting, you're most likely going to build double and create big fast value immediately.
Yep.
Because you're leveraging me, my entrepreneurial capability. So the other founder is going to listen to me and say, hey, I think Mike knows, or Mike has been through it. So let me listen to them. So our level of innovation around HR will be higher because we think innovation from that point of view. You get my point? Like, for instance, one of the things I've been thinking about is, why don't we do exchange programs? Before Bob Collymore passed on, I told him, why don't we, since you keep poaching my staff, every time I do a project, you have poached my people. This has to stop. I told him, why don't we do this? We are very entrepreneurial as a business, okay? You guys have reached a point where he's always complaining about, they had reached a tipping point where the innovation was not happening. It was really driven by external people who come with ideas. So I told him, why don't you just bring some of your key staff members to stay in my company for 90 days? You take mine, let them come to your company for 90 days. The guy will tell you the truth, boss, this Safaricom we can do. And they will come and tell me, you, my friend, what's this business you're running here? Is that correct? So maybe it's learning to cross-pollinate and say, why can't you get people from one company to come and work for you? So that's my closing shot. Because we need to be creative as founders. To be able to empower ourselves, we can only be creative to work together. So the question is, why can't you create an exchange program between companies? What IP do you have that is there, that you're not building some rocket science something? That IP is already with your senior cohort, right? You said you have senior management and then doers. So bring some doers into that ecosystem. Because they may cross-pollinate your thought process differently. And why? For 3 months, you're not even paid. And maybe you need those guys who just bring that level of knowledge and level of, even say this culture is great or this culture is bollocks. Anyway, that could be our closing comment today. And as we say, we need to innovate around talent. I think the solutions we have traditionally may work or may have worked for us, but we've also agreed and talked about Gen Zs in different aspects of it, which is very interesting. I think we've taken personal reflection. And this is going to be, I think, the longest show ever. But I guess, as one of our colleagues has said, it's a human resources. We need to look at it human, but there are resources that we need to build. I wish you well, and thanks a lot, everybody, for coming. And I'm sure we're going to have interesting feedback from this show. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.